Hello everyone, welcome to What If Deku Had the Godly Quirk of Control Over All Elements Part 1. Before we start, please go support SoulnessTakingOver for writing that awesome fanfic. Izuku Midoriya is a teenager that has a special ability. Although 80% of the world also has some kind of special ability, he is out of the ordinary, as he basically has several of those abilities. This is the story about a teenager on a journey to become the world's greatest hero. Izuku is slightly OP. Childhood. Izuku sat in his chair. His small 4-year-old self was looking at the screen, completely taken by the scenes on the screen. On the screen was his favorite hero, All Might. Izuku was watching a video which showed All Might saving dozens of people from the wreck that was the fight place where he and another villain had just fought it out. This was a video Izuku had seen several hundred times. He had already memorized everything that happens in the video. It was his favorite video, and favorite thing to do, watching that video. Izuku, we have to leave now. It was his mother, Izuku Midoriya. She used to have strong telekinesis before the incident, but after the death of Izuku's father she became a wreck and tried to end herself. Luckily someone saved her, but as a result to her attempted suicide, her powers are weakened heavily. Quirk, weak telekinesis. Izuku was supposed to go to the doctor today to see what quirk he would get. I am here, he shouted to his mother as he came out of his room. Good. Now let's go, she replied. They took the train to the doctor. I hope I get a cool quirk like Kaken, he said to his mother with excitement in his eyes. She just looked at him with a smile. When they came to the doctor they checked in and went to where they were told to go. Izuku will get a quirk, the doctor said as Izuku lightened even more. However, it will not be any of his parents' quirks. Izuku didn't really care, but his mother seemed a little down after the doctor said that. Izuku will get one of the strongest quirks this world has yet to see. This quirk is a completely new quirk, yet to be written down. You know how we categorize quirks after how powerful they are alone. Well, Izuku, you have a friend, right? Named Katsuki Bakugo, the doctor said. Izuku nodded. His quirk is in the legendary category. However, you have a quirk in the heavenly category. A quirk of a god. Your quirk is that you have the ability to control all the elements on Earth. That means Izuku can control wind, earth, fire, water, ice, lightning, light and darkness, and with training, he could definitely control it to his benefits. And with that last sentence, their visit was over. Izuku Midoriya, he can control all the primary elements, wind, earth, fire, water, ice, lightning, light and darkness. Quirk, Elemental Master. When they came home, Izuku went to his friend Bakugo, who lived across the street, to tell him about his quirk. He rang the doorbell with excitement. Bakugo opened the door. Kaken, I just found out what my quirk is, Izuku shouted at Bakugo. Really? Deku, what is it? Bakugo asked. Let's go to the park. I'll show you, Izuku replied. When they got to the park, Izuku asked Bakugo to step away from him. Izuku closed his eyes and started to feel the power and energy of the weather flow through him. He raised his arms to the sky and focused all his energy to shoot out of his hands. The power beam shot up in the sky and suddenly dispersed in a small explosion of dust. Suddenly it started raining. Bakugo looked at Izuku in awe. Deku, that's so cool, he shouted from where he was standing. Izuku just looked at him. He started running towards Bakugo and hugged him. I can't believe that actually worked, he said as he was hugging Bakugo. Hey, do you think you can make it stop raining where we're standing? Bakugo suddenly asked. Izuku just looked at him and nodded. He did the same thing again, but instead of making it stop raining just where they stood, he stopped it raining everywhere. Weird, I didn't mean to do that, Izuku said. It doesn't matter. Now let's go home before our parents get scared, Bakugo replied. Katsuki Bakugo, he can make explosions out of his sweat. If he uses his quirk too much, he'll damage his arms. Quirk, Nitroglycerin Sweat. And on their walk back, Izuku and Bakugo just used their quirks in a fun way. Bakugo aiming at trash and stuff, and blowing it up. Izuku, however, just made small tornadoes in his hands, trying to control it as much as possible. When they came back, it was already 18:00, and they both had to go to sleep because therefore. Time skip, 10 years. Izuku and Bakugo were on their way to school. They had a race every morning to see who came first. Izuku using his weather quirk to make the wind lift him up and make him fly, while Bakugo used his explosions to make him fly. Not today, though. Izuku would win most of the time, but it was always a really close race. It was a special day for them as they were going to pick a hero school to go to, and they had both agreed to try and get into UA. They went on to get through school to where the part they wanted to pick a school. They both wrote their name and which school they would go to. After that, the teacher got up and read out who wanted to go to which school. Bakugo and Izuku didn't really care about the others, as they knew they would be the only ones to attend UA. Izuku Midoriya, UA, Bakugo Katsuki, UA, the teacher announced. Everyone looked at them in awe. People whispering, "Wish I was strong enough for UA." And, "They think they are so cool." And, "I'm so jealous." Time skip, 10 months. Izuku and Bakugo had been training constantly, every day after school, and now it was the day of the entrance exam. Bakugo and Izuku both feeling confident, as they walked through the UA gates. President Mike was telling the students the rules of how to get into the exam when a guy with blue hair and glasses stood up and said, "Not to be rude, but how long will this exam last? And another thing, you there with the green and black hair. All you have been doing is look in that book the whole time we've been here. I'm sorry for doing what I'm allowed to do," Izuku answered in a sarcastic way. "And also, if you had just looked in the book, you would have known that the exam will last 15 minutes. Ida was dumbfounded. No one had ever talked back to him in that way. "I'm deeply sorry," he said before bowing and then sitting down. Tenya Ida. He has a quirk that can boost his speed. His legs have engines on the back, so he can also kick really hard. Quirk engines. Hisashi Yamada aka President Mike. He can make his voice really loud. He has a device around his neck, so he doesn't kill anyone when he speaks. Quirk voice. After the walkthrough, they each got a card where it stood which city they would go to. Izuku would go to City A, and Bakugo to City B. "Looks like they don't want us to team up with our friends," Izuku said. "Well then, good luck on beating my score," Bakugo said before he left to City B. "Oh, I'll show you," Izuku whispered to himself, as President Mike screamed that the exam had started. Entrance exam. President Mike screamed that the exam had started, and everybody started running, except Izuku, who just stood at the front gates. "What is with that kid?" one of the teachers in the control room asked. "Maybe he froze," one replied. "I don't know, I feel like this kid has a plan," the principal, Nedzu, said. Nizu, he has a quirk that makes him a really smart animal. He was first a human but was turned into a mouse-like creature when he was being experimented on by scientists. He is 110 centimeters. Quirk, IQ. They looked at him as he raised his hand. Izuku just stood there with his hand in the air. It suddenly became cloudy as you could hear the thunder in the clouds. Suddenly, the whole city flashed, and all the robots were laying on the ground, in ashes. Everybody stopped, wondering what to do. "What?" the teachers and judges yelled in their room. "How did all the robots get destroyed so easily? They just couldn't believe it." Izuku now lowered his hand as he looked at his card, which showed 307 points. He smiled, and looked at one of the cameras in the city and waved. The teachers did send in more robots immediately after Izuku had destroyed them all, but they were only 1-pointers, so the students in City A didn't get very many points. Izuku decided to scope who would make it into UA. However, after a while, everybody heard a loud crash and felt the ground rumble. Izuku headed to the source immediately, only to see examinees running away, and the biggest robot Izuku had ever seen. He was about to turn around and don't care about it when he heard a cry for help. He looked back and saw a girl that was trapped under some rubble. "Of course, I have to save the day," Izuku thought. He looked at the robot and set his hands on the ground. He made an earthquake and made sure not to hit the girl. The robot couldn't hold its balance and quickly fell down, causing it to leave a giant crater in the process. He quickly ran over to the girl and helped her get away from the robot before it got up. "Thank you," she shouted, before Izuku went back to the robot, now standing. Izuku knew what he was going to do. He did the same as last time and made the robot fall over. Then with all his power, he made the biggest tornado he could, and to everyone's surprise he managed to lift the robot over the fake skyscrapers. Then with the rest of his power, he turned the tornado upside so the air would go down. And the robot fell to the ground with the speed of a lightning strike. The robot was completely flat. Izuku had managed to lift the robot with just wind and then smashed it into the ground with a super powerful force. Everyone was dumbfounded by Izuku's show of power. Even the judges in the control room were surprised as to what this 15-year-old boy could do. He shouldn't be able to do that. One of the judges broke the silence. I mean, that robot is weighing almost 300 tons. He shouldn't be able to lift it with just air and wind. Izuku Midoriya, huh? I really hope he doesn't disappoint Aizawa. Nedza thought. Thank you for saving me. The girl ran over to Izuku. I'm Achiko Uraraka. It's a pleasure to meet you. I have one question though. How were you able to lift that gigantic robot? Izuku smiled. I just did what a hero would have done, he calmly said before passing out. Achiko Uraraka. She can nullify the gravitational pull of anything she touches. And when she puts her hands together and say, release, the gravity comes back to the object/person she touched. Quirk, zero gravity. Izuku woke up on a sofa and saw a small, old lady sit next to him. Ah, you're awake, she said. I'm Recovery Girl, nice to meet you, Izuku Midoriya. Recovery Girl. When she kisses someone they get healed from all their wounds. But the more she has to use her quirk, the more stamina she takes from the injured person. Quirk, healing kisses. Nice to meet you too, Recovery Girl. But I want to know, where am I, and what happened? Izuku asked. You are in Yue's resting area. You passed out of exhaustion when you defeated that giant robot. I honestly think they should get rid of that robot. So many students are either hurt or exhausted. It's not good for Yue's reputation if this goes on, she said, but the last part she whispered to herself. Well then, am I allowed to leave? Asked Izuku. Yes, you are, Recovery Girl answered back. When Izuku came out, he saw Bakugo waiting for him. You didn't need to go all out, stupid Izuku, Bakugo said. But deep down Izuku knew that Bakugo was worried for him and that he cared about him. It's okay, Bakugo, you don't need to get all sobby for me just exhausting myself, Izuku said in a calm voice. This made Bakugo relieved, knowing that his friend wasn't hurt. Well then, are we going home? Bakugo asked. Yes, we are, Izuku replied. They walked home in silence, and Izuku didn't like that. Bakugo, did anyone in your city stand out? He asked. Well, there was this guy that could harden his body so he would become indestructible, and there was this frog girl. She looked like a frog, and acted like a frog. She could make her tongue go out really far, and she could jump really high. Then the last one. He had a dark crow-like shadow coming out of his body. The shadow could go out really far, and he mostly relied on the shadow to do the job every time. That was everyone that caught my eye. Were there anyone that caught your eye? Bakugo finished. I didn't really see many people that stood out, but there were 3 people that caught my attention. The guy from when President Mike was explaining the rules did okay. I guess he had a quirk that made him super fast. There was another guy, who seemed to have a similar quirk to the guy that could harden in your city. His quirk made him able to transform his body into metal. And the last was a girl. She seemed to have the ability to make things she touches have zero gravity. And when she put her hands together, gravity came back to person/thing/robot she had made zero gravity, and it would crush to the ground. But none of them are stronger than us though, Izuku replied. Then they had a race home. Class 1A. Time skip, 3 weeks. Izuku and Bakugo had been training non-stop for the last 3 weeks, and Bakugo had started getting better using his quirk to Izuku's disadvantage. Izuku, however, had begun making progress on how fast he can summon a storm or a tornado. Before, he needed at least 2 seconds for a tornado and 5 seconds for a lightning storm. Now he only needed 1.5 seconds for a tornado and 4 seconds for a storm. For earthquakes, he just needed to put his hands to the ground and release some of his power. And as for tsunamis, he had to be close to the shore, so he wasn't really able to train that. The only thing he did to train his tsunamis was to go down to the beach that was covered in trash, and he made tsunamis take the trash further up on the beach, and some of the trash even ended up on the pavement. On the last day of his training with Bakugo, he got home and his mom was already at the door waiting for him. "Izuku, have you been training with Bakugo again?" she asked, as she looked at him with a worried look on her face. Izuku saw this and looked down on his clothes and his body. His clothes had holes in them and were coal black. He had scratches as from the times Bakugo actually hit him, but the most noticeable thing was his leg that had a huge cut. "I guess we went a little overboard. I'm sorry we worried you," Izuku said, scratching his neck, as he suddenly remembered Bakugo had exploded a tree and a part of the tree had pierced his leg. "Damn Bakugo," he said so only he could hear it. "Anyways, your letter from UA is here," Inko said. Then she gave it to him. Izuku took it and ran into his room, shutting the door. He sat on his chair staring at the envelope. He tore it open. Out came a chip. The chip suddenly made a hologram. "Hello, Izuku Midoriya, at the entrance exam, you scored an impressive 357 points. You scored 307 villain points, but there was a second way to get points too. By being a true hero and helping others. And you scored 50 hero points, by helping someone in need. Therefore you scored 357 points, with only me beating you when I got 500 points in the school records. So with nothing else to say, welcome to UA, Izuku Midoriya," All Might said to him from the hologram, tears running down Izuku's face as he smiled. "Finally, my biggest step to becoming the next #1 hero," he celebrated. The next day Izuku woke up and got ready to go to UA. On the way to UA, he met Bakugo. "Hey Bakugo, I figured you would pass. Shall we walk together?" Izuku said. "Yeah, I guess," he answered. When they came to the class, the people that were there already flocked around Izuku. "You're the guy that defeated that 0-pointer, and got the most points in UA's history, only behind All Might," they said. "I just did what a normal hero would do. I'm guessing most of you would also have tried to save someone if you knew they were in trouble," Izuku said. So manly the two students that could harden thought. After answering some questions, Izuku walked to his seat and sat quietly down. Izuku could feel someone staring at him from behind. Izuku looked behind him and saw one of the most beautiful girls he's ever seen, Momo Yaoyorozu. Flashback. One day, when Izuku was on his way home from training, he heard a call for help. And being the true hero he is, he quickly rushed to their aid. He ran into an alleyway and saw a girl being beaten by 4 thugs. The girl had black hair tied up in a ponytail. She looked like she was around the same age as Izuku. The thugs were beating her senseless. She summoned a small shield for protection, but it didn't help much. That's when Izuku used his element Quirk to make a small earthquake where the thugs were standing. The thugs lost their balance and fell. Izuku used this opportunity to lift the girl with his wind and send her to him. He caught her right before she passed out from blood loss. He put her down. "You guys are going to pay for this," Izuku told the thugs that were getting up. "You brat. I'll kill you," one of the thugs answered before he used his quirk to send Izuku flying up in the air with his wind quirk. Izuku regained his strength and slowly floated down. He used his fire to send 2 of the thugs flying into a wall, knocking them both unconscious. The 2 thugs that were left looked at Izuku with anger in their eyes. The first villain used his telekinesis to throw a trash can at Izuku. But Izuku swiftly burned it to ash. Then he used his ice power to trap the villain. And the last villain looked at Izuku, now fear in his eyes. "I suggest you leave before I do that to you too," Izuku said with an irritated tone to his voice. The last villain quickly turned around and picked up the 2 other guys that were knocked out by Izuku. "You'll pay for this," the villain answered before he quickly made his escape, leaving one of the villains left. Izuku retracted his ice, and the villain trapped in it fell to the ground unconscious. Izuku looked back at the girl. She had an extremely pretty face, with a fine body as well. Wow, she's really pretty, he thought before he saw the bruise marks and cuts she had gotten from the villains. He used his quirk to seal up her cuts, and partially healed her, closing all her visible cuts. "I have to get her home. so she can rest somewhere comfy, he thought. He picked her up bridal style and flew back to his apartment. He saw that the door was locked, so he opened it without dropping her down. When he came inside, he found a letter from his mom. I had to go to a meeting. Food is in the microwave, and there are some bandages in your room if you need to patch yourself up from training today. It said. He went into his room and placed the girl on his bed. The bandages were on his desk. He used the bandages to patch her up. He saw that her phone was in her jacket, so he took it out and called her parents. Momo, oh thank God. We thought something happened to you. Izuku could hear a woman's voice and figured it was the girl's mom. Yeah, about that. Something did happen to her. Izuku answered. Who are you? What did you to my daughter? The woman asked in a panic. Don't worry, ma'am. I saved her from these thugs that tried to kidnap her. Izuku replied. I can't thank you enough. I'm so happy she's okay. Tell me your address, and we'll come and pick her up, the woman said. Okay, it's XXXXXXXXXXX, and my mom's phone number is XXXXXXXXXXXXXX, Izuku said. Okay, we'll be there in an hour. And thank you again for saving our daughter, the woman said before she hangs up. After about 40 minutes, the girl woke up. Izuku was sleeping in his chair beside her. She looked at him and blushed. He had such a cute face, and his hair was really messy, but it fit him perfectly. She saw that he was really well built, and he was wearing a tight dark green jumper and black pants. She blushed even more, before looking away. She saw that his room was really small. There were some posters around his room of All Might, and there was a desk with a computer and some All Might figures. She tried to sit up, but she felt an aching pain in her whole body. She looked at her body, and saw bandages, almost over her whole body. Then she remembered, oh, I was assaulted in an alleyway. This guy must have saved me. She managed to wake up Izuku, by nudging his knee with her hand. Izuku opened his eyes, and he first thought he was dead. Because before him was, what he thought, an angel. Her eyes were dazzling and her hair was perfectly set up in a ponytail. She was wearing really nice clothes too. She wore a pink t-shirt with a red jacket on top and dark blue jeans. Hello, I figure you're the one who has saved me from those villains, she said. Why yes, I saved you, and patched up your eye injuries, Izuku answered. Thank you. I'm grateful. I'm Momo Yaoyorozu. And you're? Momo said. Izuku Midoriya. I'm Izuku Midoriya. Nice to meet you, Momo Yaoyorozu, Izuku said, stretching out his hand and regaining his composure. Momo gladly shook his hand. Nice to meet you too, Izuku Midoriya, she said while giving Izuku one of those super smiles. She's so pretty, he thought. After that they talked a while, about quirks and heroes. And they became friends really fast. But sadly, after 20 minutes, Momo's parents came and picked her up. Why do I feel lonely now that I'm not with him, she thought to herself. Why was it so hard to see her leave, Izuku thought while clutching his heart. Momo Yaoyorozu, she can make anything she knows how to make. Her quirk uses her body fat to make the things. If she has to make something big and doesn't have enough body fat, the creation will use her clothes to make the thing. Quirk creation. End of flashback. Well, hello Izuku, Momo said. Hello Momo, Izuku answered. They stared at each other for a while, when Izuku broke the silence. How have you been? He asked. I've been doing well. It wasn't really a surprise to see you here. You're really strong, she complimented. Thank you. You look really pretty today, Izuku said. Momo became red as a tomato and turned away. Why am I reacting like this? Many boys have called me pretty before. Why do I become really happy when he says that to me? She asked herself. But they didn't notice someone staring at them. It was a boy. Shoto Todoroki. Bakugo, however, did notice Shoto. Bakugo waved at him and got his attention. Then Bakugo gave him one of those stay-away stares and a middle finger. Shoto just looked back at him in a blank expression. Shoto Todoroki. His quirk is that he can summon and control fire and ice. His hair is white on one side and red on the other. He is half fire and half ice. However, he refuses to use his fire because of his father, who mercilessly beat his mother every single day. Quirk, half hot and half cold. After 10 minutes, everyone calmed themselves and sat down. Suddenly, a guy in a yellow sleeping bag rose up from behind the teacher desk. There was someone in the sleeping bag, the whole class thought. Hello, class. I'm Shota Aizawa, your homeroom teacher. Now go and put on your training uniforms. We are going to train. Meet me outside in 5 minutes, he said before he walked outside. Shota Aizawa aka Eraserhead. His quirk lets him delete other people's quirk by looking at them. When he blinks, the effect wears off. He has to have eye drops with him because his eyes get really sore because of his quirk. He is often working in the shadows, on low-life criminals hiding in small facilities or alleyways. Quirk, erasure. When everybody came out, Aizawa said, Okay, class, we are going to go through some obstacles to test your quirks. Izuku, you got the most points with 357. How far could you throw a ball in middle school? I think I could throw 67 meters, sir, Izuku said. Now try using your quirk, Aizawa said. Izuku smirked and got the ball from Aizawa. He stood in the circle where he was going to throw the ball. He took his pose, and with all his power he threw it as far as he could. At first, it didn't go very far, but then it picked up speed. Suddenly, like a bullet that was just fired, it flew through the sky and pierced the clouds until you couldn't see it anymore. Aizawa just looked at the device that would show him where it lands. The meters just went up and up. Doesn't seem like it'll stop, so we are going to move on, he said with a calm expression. This is going to be so fun, he heard some students say. Well, since you think this is going to be fun, let's make it so that the person with the lowest score will be expelled, Aizawa said. All the students froze, except 3, Izuku, Bakugo, and Todoroki. The first obstacle was a 50-meter run. He could only rely on his wind to give him a boost, but he still came fourth, with 5.13 seconds. The second test was grip strength, and again Izuku could only rely on the wind to push his hands together. He got fifth with 153 kilograms. The third test was a standing long jump test. This time he could rely on his wind power much more to lift his body forward. He got first with 63 meters, and Tsuyu came second with 55 meters. You can jump pretty far, Izuku, she complimented. Thanks, you're not that bad either, Izuku said with a smile that warmed Tsuyu's heart. So cute, she thought. Tsuyu Ajuri, she has the traits of a frog. She can jump really far and stretch out her tongue really far too. Her favorite place to fight is the water. Quirk, frog. The next test was repeated side steps, and Izuku came 11th, his worst test. Up next was the distance run. Izuku could use the wind more this time, so he could go at the same speed for the whole run. He came second, behind Ida. Wow, you're so fast, Ida, Izuku complimented. Thank you, Ida said and bowed down. Then Izuku gave him one of the purest smiles Ida has ever seen. So pure, must protect, he thought. The next obstacle was push-ups, and Izuku did fairly well due to him training his body, as well as his quirk for almost 10 years. He came third, behind Sato and Ojiro. The same went for obstacle 7 as that was sit-ups. At last came the ball throw. It looks like we have to wait a while for the ball to come back, Aizawa said. Here it comes. Everyone looked around, and they saw something weird. The ball was coming from the opposite direction Izuku had thrown it. Izuku let it fall down, Aizawa said. K, Izuku replied. When it fell down, Aizawa's device beeped. Aizawa showed the class the result, and everyone looked at the number in disbelief. 43,000 kilometers, Aizawa called out. Wait, don't tell me the ball went around the whole Earth? Momo asked. Izuku just stood there and looked like nothing happened. So he still made the ball fly while we were doing other exercises? Asked Ida. That's correct, Aizawa answered. Everyone looked at Izuku in awe. Izuku did end up getting second though. The girl that could control the gravity of things she touches came first because she got infinity. Izuku got first place ahead of Shoto Todoroki, then Bakugo, then Momo. And in the end, the small perverted purple little guy, who was Minoru Mineta, was last. "Minoru, go home and don't come back, you don't have what it takes to become a hero," Aizawa said, with one of the harshest voices he could. The girls were glad that he was the one to leave, but in a weird way, everyone, including the guys, they all felt sorry for the young hero in training. Heroes versus villains. Izuku woke up and did his normal morning routine. He met Bakugo on the way. "Good morning, Bakugo," he said. "Oh, hi, Izuku. What do you think we'll do today?" Bakugo replied. "I don't know, but I hope it's something fun," Izuku said while smirking. "Me too," Bakugo said. The day went normal for the young heroes in training, until their hero class. "I am coming through the door like a normal person." It was All Might. But Izuku wouldn't really agree that smashing the door is a normal way to go through the door. "It's All Might!" most of the class shouted. Suddenly 19 metal containers came out of the wall. "Everybody put on you hero costumes and meet me in City C," All Might told them. All Might, nothing is publicly known about All Might's quirk. The only thing you can say is that it enhances his strength, speed and stamina. Quirk, unknown. Izuku's suit was black darkness with lines of yellow lightning, red fire, dark blue water, light blue ice, gray wind, white light and brown earth. And in the middle, all the good elements were in a hexagon, with darkness above them. All of his primary elements in one suit. The suit was skin tight, so it really showed off Izuku's muscles. The suit was made out of thin metal strings, and his boots had a boost under them that allowed him to run faster. His gloves had a strong composure and spikes on the tip of his fingers for better grip. Everyone looked in awe as Izuku walked out. "That's such a cool suit, Izuku," Momo said. Her suit was a suit that showed much skin. She had red clothing over her mountain's cough, and a very short skirt. It was good that Izuku was wearing a mask, so no one saw his nosebleed. "Thank you, Momo. Your outfit isn't bad either," Izuku answered. Momo blushed. "Thank you," she said. "Okay, now that everyone is here, I'm going to announce the rules," All Might said. "We are going to draw lots. One team of heroes will try and either capture the villains, or touch the bomb that the villains are going to try and protect. Team A, Momo and Izuku. Team B, Tetsu and Tokoyami. Team C, Mina and Aoyama. Team D, Sato and Ibra. Team F, Bakugo and Achiko. Team G, Shoji and Kendo. Team H, Tsuyu and Ida. Team I, Kaminari and Jiro. Team J, Kirishima and Siro, and last but not least, Todoroki on Team K. I'm sorry you are alone. But the numbers don't add up, and now for the people that will meet each other. The ones I say first are heroes, and the ones I say afterwards are villains. Team A versus Team F, Team B versus Team C, Team D versus Team J, Team H versus Team K, and Team I versus Team G. That is all the teams. The villains have 5 minutes to get ready. The first fight is Team A versus Team F. So the rest of you follow me? That was the last thing All Might said before leaving with everyone, except Izuku, Momo, Uraraka and Bakugo. "Do you have a plan, Izuku?" Momo asked. "Yes, I do. Bakugo will probably chase after me at the start, so when he finds us, you quickly run into one of the sideways. I'll hold him back a little, and when you get back, you surprise him with a blinding grenade to blind him. When he's blinded, I'll use my ice to trap him, and then we tape him up. When he's done, Uraraka will think you're alone, so you go out and show yourself. She will think it's only you, and lower her guard. You get her as close to the door as possible. Then I will come out of the shadows and tape her up, capturing her. Then you'll touch the bomb," Izuku said. Momo was surprised how well Izuku had described the whole match. After a minute or two they heard All Might. "Hero team, go!" They quickly ran inside. Then suddenly Bakugo came out one of the sideways. "I've got you now," he said. Bakugo attacked with an explosion, but Izuku barely dodged. "Momo, go you now. The plan," Izuku said. "Do you really think you're going to beat me alone?" Bakugo asked. "No, but I believe Momo can beat Uraraka," Izuku replied. Then Bakugo attacked with his right arm raised. He tried to punch Izuku, but Izuku dodged and caught his hand, and threw him into the ground as hard as he could, making Bakugo spit out blood. Right as that happened, Momo came back, and when Bakugo got up she threw her grenades at him. This blinded Bakugo, and Izuku used the opportunity to capture Bakugo in thick layers of ice, not covering his head. Izuku then walked over to Bakugo. "Looks like I outsmarted you again," he said before putting the tape on Bakugo and capturing him. They then ran up the floors into the room where Uraraka was trying to be more like a villain. Izuku looked at Momo and said, "You know what to do, Momo, I'll wait here." Momo then showed herself, and Uraraka was ready. They talked a little before Uraraka threw a chair at Momo, that easily dodged. Momo was walking to the right and Uraraka to the left. However, Uraraka didn't dare walk too far away from the Deku bomb. While Uraraka was focusing on Momo and the bomb, Izuku turned himself into a shadow and went to the nearest pillar, that was next to Uraraka. He suddenly stepped out and trapped Uraraka in his ice. She looked confused as to where this ice came from. Izuku then walked to her and captured her with the tape too. Momo touched the bomb, and All Might announced, "Hero team wins." Izuku then took away his ice, freeing Bakugo and Uraraka. On the way down the building, the three students met Bakugo, and he did something extraordinary. He shook both their hands and congratulated them on their win. The rest of the battles went by as you thought they would. Team B winning over Team C, Team D winning over Team J, Team K winning over Team H, and Team G winning over Team I. After the battles, Izuku said goodbye to Momo and the others and went back home with Bakugo. School Representatives and the Attack on USJ Part 1. Izuku woke up, and the first thing he did was think about Momo. "Why do I think so much about her?" he asked himself before taking a shower and getting dressed. Then he ate breakfast and brushed his teeth. He met Bakugo on his way to UA. "Hey Izuku, did you recently get yourself a friend?" Bakugo asked, putting pressure in the friend part. Izuku knew what he was talking about and immediately blushed. "I don't understand what you mean," he answered blatantly. "Oh, you know. Momo Yaoyorozu," Bakugo said, whispering the last thing in his ear. Izuku blushed even more. "You should ask her out. I've been noticing that half bastard has been looking her way. Man up, just ask her, and if she doesn't say yes, it's her fault for losing the most amazing person in the world, after me of course," Bakugo said. "I don't know. I don't think she likes me," Izuku said, looking down. "She likes you. You two get along so well. It's like it was destiny that you met her," Bakugo said, giving Izuku an unexpected boost of confidence. When they came to their class, everyone was there already. Izuku sat down after he had said hi to Momo. "Okay class, shut up. Today we're going to do something that will affect your future," Aizawa said. "Affect our future?" most of the class thought. "Today you are going to select class representatives," Aizawa said. Some normal school things, the class thought. Suddenly many people raised their hand and shouted, "Pick me, I want to be one of the representatives," they shouted. "Everyone calm down," Ida shouted loud and got everyone's attention. "I think we should have a voting system," he said. The class agreed, and Ida felt proud that he had made an impact. "Okay, so the class rep is Izuku and the vice rep is Momo," Aizawa announced. Izuku stood there nervously. "Thank you for voting for me," they said proudly. When Izuku got back to his seat, Bakugo gave him a torn piece of some paper. On the paper it stood, "Destiny," and Izuku became red as a tomato the moment he read it. "Izuku? Do you want to eat lunch together?" Momo asked in a low voice. "Sure," Izuku answered. They went outside and took out their lunch boxes. "Wow, you have a big lunch, Momo," Izuku said, as he saw the size of the box. "Yeah, I have to eat a lot because my quirk needs body fat to work properly," she answered. What they didn't know was that they had sat down where everybody in the cafeteria could see them. "The class reps are getting along really well, don't you think?" Mina asked. Mina is Shido, she can make acid out of her body. She has pink skin color. Quirk, acid. Yeah, you would almost think they had known each other for a long time. Kirishima answered. Kirishima Ijuru, he can harden his body, so he is almost impenetrable. He has red spiky hair. Quirk, harden. Izuku saved Momo from a group of villains a few days before school started. Bakugo joined the conversation. So manly. Kirishima and Tetsu said. Tetsu 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 Tetsu. He can make his body into metal. His quirk and Kirishima's quirk is really similar. Quirk, metal body. After a few days, people were starting to get along really well. Izuku knew everyone, but his 5 closest friends were Bakugo, Momo, Tsuyu, Kirishima, and Uraraka. Okay class, today we are going to focus on your hero training. So get on your costumes and meet me outside in 5 minutes, or else you will have to walk alone to where we're headed, Aizawa said. The whole class started getting worked up, and they all started to hurry. Everyone had come out in 5 minutes. They all sat down inside the bus, and waited for about 20 minutes until the bus stopped. Outside, they were being welcomed by the pro hero, 13, to USJ equals Unforeseen Simulation Joint. Welcome to USJ, where you will be doing all your training today. I am 13, your teacher for today, 13 said. 13, he can open black holes, and anything that comes inside the black hole will be turned to dust. 13 is a rescue hero, so he works mostly on rescue missions on Earth and in space, but if he has to fight, he can do that too. Quirk black hole. They walked inside and saw that the USJ was humongous. There were different zones like a shipwreck zone, mountain slide zone, fire zone, and so on. Today you will work on rescue missions in different zones, 13 continued. Where is All Might? I thought he would be here too, 13 whispered to Aizawa. He couldn't come, because of his limit, Aizawa answered. Hey, you got fake villains too? That's awesome, Kirishima asked. Aizawa turned around and saw dozens of villains coming out of a purple mist. Those are not fake villains. Step back, 13, get the students out of here. Now, Aizawa said. Come on, students. Move it, 13 said. The students started walking towards the door, but was cut off by a purple mist. Either run and tell the teachers that, Izuku said right before he was teleported away. But Eden knew what he had to do, and quickly used his speed to run past the villain, and out of the USJ. A/N, I'm just going to focus on Izuku and Momo now. Izuku was teleported underwater. He immediately saw a villain heading straight for him. The villain had a mutation quirk that turned them into a shark. Izuku was used to water, so he managed to dodge, but only barely. He then used his quirk to launch him out of the water and onto the boat that was in the water. So this is the shipwreck zone, he thought, when he suddenly saw Momo in the water. Without thinking, he jumped in the water and swam to her. But then Momo got dragged under. He ducked down and saw 8 villains under the water. He froze the water where the villain that had dragged Momo under was. The villain sank to the bottom, leaving 7 others. Without hesitation, he threw himself and Momo on board the ship. Izuku landed safely, while Momo had trouble processing what just happened, so he caught her, bridal style. He held her and looked at her. Momo blushed. Izuku blushed too. Can you stand? He asked. Momo just shook her head. He laid her down and took a look at her leg. It did not look good. The villain had dragged with such force that Momo had sprained her ankle. Izuku made some flat rocks and he found a rope inside the ship. He adjusted her ankle. She whined a little when he did that. Then he placed the stones next to her ankle and tied the rope tight around the stones to level out her ankle. He then made a crutch out of stone and gave it to her. You should be able to stand now, Izuku said. Thank you. You saved me again, Momo said. She was happy she got teleported to Izuku. Izuku was walking around the ship, talking to himself on how they could get back to the shore. He thought of one thing after another, but he always found flaws in his plans. Then he thought of something. Momo? Are you able to make paralyzing bombs? The kind that neutralizes the enemy? He asked. Yes, but it'll take some time, as I'm already hurt, she answered. After a few minutes, she had made 3 neutralizing bombs. Momo had a control to when the bombs would set off, so Izuku threw all the bombs in the water. Izuku then picked up Momo again, and then he started concentrating his powers to make a whirlpool and suck the villains in. This worked, and the moment they were all close to each other, Momo pressed the trigger and neutralized all the villains with the bombs. Izuku then scoped the water to see that everything was clear, Then he made an ice bridge and carried Momo over the water and to the shore. It was quite slippery on the ice, so he fell on his ass, but still caught Momo. She chuckled a bit before Izuku stood up again and carried her safely to the shore. The Attack on USJ Part 2. When Izuku and Momo came to the shore, they saw that Aizawa was holding off the weaker villains. "I hate when heroes live up to their hype," a villain with hands all over his body said. "Momo, take him out." Aizawa tried to erase the Nomu's quirk, but nothing seemed to happen. Suddenly Aizawa was on the ground with several broken bones, and a giant bird-like creature was on top of him. The bird-like creature had giant muscles, and a beak instead of a mouth. The brain was popping out, and the eyes were placed on the brain. Izuku and Momo quickly hid behind a huge boulder. "What are we going to do now?" Momo asked, while whispering. Izuku looked at the scene in front of him, and he couldn't take it anymore. He quickly stepped forward, and used his ice to freeze the creature that was beating Aizawa senseless. "Well, hello there, little guy. I'm Tamura Shigaraki, and I'm here to kill All Might. However, it doesn't seem like he's here. Maybe if I kill some of his students he'll come," Tamura said, with a sadistic smile. Tamura Shigaraki. His quirk is that anything he touches with 5 fingers crumbles to dust. He has hands covering most of his body, and has messy hair like Izuku. Quirk, decay. Nomu, kill him. The Nomu broke free and charged Izuku with blinding speed. Izuku made a wall of earth and ice, but the Nomu broke through, and hit Izuku in the stomach, sending him flying into the stairs that led up to the exit. He was barely conscious, but then he saw the Nomu walking towards the boulder that Momo was hiding behind. Izuku got up and was ready. He figured he could take 2 more hits from the Nomu. Izuku threw a lightning bolt straight through Nomu's chest, only for it to regenerate and heal itself. "It's useless. Nomu has shock absorption and regeneration. It can even regenerate limbs. It was made to kill All Might," Tamura said. Izuku was then punched in the air, and then back to the ground. He felt that several of his muscles were torn. His left shoulder was dislocated, and he had broken 5 of his ribs, with one of the broken ribs rubbing against his left lung. It was hard to breathe, and he couldn't see or hear properly. That's when he saw the Nomu, again heading for the boulder Momo was behind. The Nomu lifted the boulder, and noticed Momo. It threw away the boulder and picked her up. "No, let me go!" she screamed. "Kill her, Nomu!" Tamura commanded. That's when Izuku snapped. He felt his body getting a boost. He started to sparkle electricity around himself, and with one jump he had taken Momo to the top of the stairs. Izuku simply put her down, and turned back to the villains. He felt his power flow through his body, and summoned a lightning bolt made of lightning, ice, fire, earth, darkness, light and water, and it had electricity running through the bolt. The air around the bolt shaped around it to give it more power. It was the most powerful attack Izuku had. He aimed at the Nomu, as the lightning bolt became bigger and bigger. It became so big that it didn't fit in Izuku's hand, and he had to hover it over his hand. The bolt became 10 meters long, and 2.5 meters wide. He then threw it at the Nomu with all his strength, piercing the Nomu's chest. "I already told you. That won't work, the Nomu can regenerate," Tamura said. But then something weird happened. The Nomu screamed in agony, and fell on the floor, evaporating. "What did you do?" Tamura screamed at Izuku. "You said it can regenerate cells?" "I just killed the cells completely, and then altering them to do the opposite, and kill other cells, instead of recreating them. I made the lightning bolt pierce the Nomu, so it could send fire and lightning through the veins of the Nomu, and completely evaporate it. Because you can't regenerate cells if there are no cells to begin with," Izuku answered, as his sparkling stopped. "Kurojiri, let's go. There's nothing to do here now, and the pros will be here soon too," Tamura said. "Okay, master," Kurojiri answered before teleporting himself and Tamura back to the secret base. Moments later, All Might arrived, in his muscular form. He noticed that 13, Aizawa and a lot of the students were injured, but luckily no one was dead. He then saw Izuku resting on Momo's lap, with his eyes closed. "What happened here?" he asked her. Villains attacked us and they were here to kill you, but Izuku managed to fend them off. He's such a great hero, she answered. She looked down at his face and lifted up his hair. I'm glad he was here. If he hadn't been here, then maybe I would have don't think about that, she told herself. Anyway, he has severe injuries, All Might. His left shoulder is dislocated, and he has broken 5 ribs. He even ruptured his lung, and he has troubling breathing, Momo said. All Might didn't wait a second, as he picked up Izuku and jumped to the nearest hospital. He did so with the rest of the injured people as well. Later the police arrived. They captured the remaining villains and arrested them. The rest of the students that weren't injured were sent home. Destiny. Izuku woke up in a hospital bed. To his left was a machine that regulated his heartbeat and helped him breathe normally. But to his right, there was a person sleeping on his covers. It was Momo Yaoyorozu, the girl Izuku had fallen deeply in love with. He looked at her. She looked comfortable and in peace. Izuku woke her up. Hello? Momo, wake up, he said. Just 5 more minutes, she said. Then she remembers. She shot up looking at Izuku. She was redder than any red you could think of. Oh, hello Izuku, she said. You're awake. Yes, but can you tell me what happened? Izuku asked. After you defeated that thing, All Might arrived. I told him what happened, and he brought you here as fast as possible. Momo replied. Okay, how long have I been gone? Izuku asked. 1 week. Everyone is talking about you, the kid that saved you is all the news talk about nowadays. Momo said. And what have I missed? Izuku asked. Nothing. We haven't had any classes since the USJ incident. Momo replied. The door suddenly opened, and the doctor came inside. You're awake, good. We are happy to announce that you have fully recovered. Your shoulder is not dislocated anymore, and your ribs and your lung is no longer broken, the doctor said. You are free to leave whenever you want, but be careful, there is a lot of paparazzi outside the hospital. Thank you, Izuku said as he sat up. Momo helped him out of bed and down to the street. They had to go out the back door, and outside there was a black limousine waiting for them. So how about dinner at my place? If so, how about 18.30? Momo asked. Okay, I am already looking forward to it, Izuku answered. Izuku was then driven home. Izuku looked at the All Might clock hanging on the wall. The clock showed 13.00. I still have time to do some training, he thought. Izuku then did his normal workout of 80 push-ups, sit-ups, and squats, before he then ran his daily run of 8 kilometers. When he came home, he noticed that the clock was 15.30. Izuku then took a shower and got properly dressed. He wore a white shirt, with a black vest and a back jacket over. He also wore black pants and black shoes with white socks. When the clock was 18.15, the same limousine came and picked him up. They then drove to Momo's house. When he came to Momo's house, he was blown away by the size of the house. It was the biggest house Izuku had ever seen. He saw Momo waiting for him at the door. Izuku may have been blown away by the size of the house, but he was more blown away by how beautiful Momo was. She was wearing a white dress, with white socks and black high heels. She also had a white tie in her hair, to match her outfit. Wow, you are so beautiful, Izuku said before blushing. Did I say that out loud? Yes, but thank you, Momo answered, as she also blushed. They looked at each other. Momo then turned around and opened the door. Mom, Dad, he's here, she said. Momo's parents came down to the hallway. They looked at the 2 children and saw that Momo was gazing at Izuku, while he took off his jacket. They smirked at each other and walked up to Izuku. Hello, you must be the guy our daughter has been talking about. It's a pleasure to meet you, and we thank you again for saving our daughter. I'm Momo's mom, Nijiru Yaoyorozu, Nijiru said. Nijiru Yaoyorozu, she can manipulate any type of metal, and make anything out of metal. Quirk, metal bending. And I'm Yoroi Yaoyorozu, it's a pleasure to meet you, Izuku Midoriya, Yoroi said as he held out his hand to greet Izuku. Yoroi Yaoyorozu, He can make anything, not metal based out of his own body fat. Quirk, creation. Izuku greeted his hand. Yes. It is a pleasure to meet you too, Izuku said as he shook Yoroi's hand, and then Nijire's. Thank you for having me to dinner, Izuku said before he did a slight bow. He has manners, that's good, Nijire and Yoro thought. They then walked into the dining room. They had talked a bit before the chef came into the room. Your food will come now, sir, he said to Yoroi before the kitchen door was opened. Out came row after row of food. Everything from fish food to taco. Izuku was surprised at how much food that they were supposed to eat. That's a lot of food, he said. Yeah, maybe you knew that Momo's quirk works so that she has to eat very much. The same goes for us, Yoroi said. Oh, that makes sense, Izuku said. They started to eat. So Izuku, are you Momo's friend or something more than a friend? Nijire asked. Mom, Momo said. Why even ask something like that? Oh darling, don't think we haven't noticed. You have been talking about Izuku so much the last days. Saving you twice, and being such a strong and true hero, Nijire said. Momo blushed, and tried to think of something to say back, but couldn't find the words. Izuku was blushing too. Both of them remained silent, and Nijire and Yoroi smirked at each other. Izuku, you must be very strong, to be able to save Momo, and possibly all your classmates, against a threat that was supposed to be able to kill All Might. Yoroi changed the topic. I don't remember much about that. I think I had just been beaten to the ground, and I was going to give up, but then I saw the monster was about to kill Momo, and my body just moved on its own. It was like I teleported from one place to another while picking up Momo. I just couldn't let a classmate and good friend get killed, while I just stood and watched. Izuku replied. That must have felt very heroic then. Being able to save Momo like that, Nijire said. Yeah, it did, Izuku said as he looked at Momo with dreamy eyes. After Izuku had been there for a while and was full, he said his goodbyes to Momo's parents, and thanked them for having him to dinner. I'll walk you to the gate, Momo said. Izuku agreed, but when Momo turned around, she saw her parents winking at her. She looked at them angrily, and turned to Izuku again, and walked him to the gate. This was fun, Izuku said. Yeah, it was. Maybe next time we can eat at your place? Momo replied. Sure, Izuku said, before turning around and walked to the limousine. He felt Momo drag his jacket, and he turned around. He looked at her, and she looked down at the ground. He lifted her head and leaned closer to her. They both blushed before they both leaned closer. Their lips met each other, and they just stood there. Their eyes closed, but they felt like they were floating. Electricity and water started to randomly flow around Izuku, and Momo randomly made small items. They had to separate for air, but they quickly met again. The kiss felt so hot, warm, relaxing. Momo placed her hands around Izuku's neck, and Izuku's hands went around Momo's waist. They stood like that a few minutes before Izuku went out of the kiss. That felt good, he managed to say. Both their faces were red like tomatoes. Why, yeah? Well, I'll see why you at school, she said, looking away from Izuku. Why, yeah, Izuku said, before turning around and walking into the limousine. He waved her goodbye, and she waved back. Then the limousine drove away. That was incredible, Izuku thought. I didn't expect my first kiss to go to him, Momo thought. But deep down, they were both happy they had done it. Izuku clenched his heart and looked out the window. He was thinking about Momo. 1K special. Izuku was sitting in front of the fire with a coffee mug in his left hand. Tomorrow was Christmas. Momo was leaning against his shoulder feeling tired. She also had a coffee mug, but it was in her right hand. They both sat on the sofa just looking into the raging flames. Izuku had been staying in Momo's house for the last couple of days, and he had gotten even closer to her and her family. Momo's father had even teased them by leaving a condom in their room. They had both agreed to wait until they were both ready. Today had been the most tiring day for them, as they had gone around town giving presents to the kids at different parks. Izuku felt really good after doing so because the kids reminded him of himself. He had always been that one ray of sunshine in the daycare when he was little. Now they were only waiting for their parents to get home. Their parents had been on a double date since Inko had found herself a suitable MN. His name was Toshinori Yagi. Izuku had questioned it at first but surely gave up after he saw his mom being truly happy. But he had told Toshinori one thing before they started dating. Flashback. Izuku was outside his house and Toshinori was standing in front of him. He was in his skeleton form. "I know you're dating my mom," Izuku said, and Toshinori stiffened. "And honestly, I approve. I have seen you around my mom, and when she is with you she seems happy." "I haven't seen her this happy in a long time, and I'm glad you have come into not only my life but hers as well," Izuku continued, and Toshinori let out a sigh. "Thank you, Midori, let me finish. Like I said, I'm glad you're in our lives, but if you ever, and I mean ever, hurt her, you'll regret you gave me your power, because if that happens, I will hunt you down and beat the shit out of you. The headlines will read, 'All Might retires early after a fight with a 15-year-old. You'll become a laughingstock, and I'll cut you out of my life. Do you get that?'" Izuku calmed down after his little rage fest. Toshinori looked scared as hell. He had never felt this much anger and rage come from a child ever before, and definitely not towards him. "Oh, okay. I promise I'll protect her with all my might, pun intended," he said, scared that Izuku would beat him. "You better," Izuku said before he walked inside. End of flashback. "He'd better keep his promise," Izuku said to himself. "What is it, babe?" Momo asked. Izuku looked at Momo and saw that she was glaring him down with worry and confusion. "It's nothing you have to worry your cute little head about," Izuku said, petting her head. Momo lit up and went back to look at the flames. "Thanks, babe. You really know how to make me comfortable," Momo said. "Yeah," Izuku replied, drifting off into space. The two soon fell asleep on the couch, with Izuku sitting up and Momo leaning on his shoulder. Soon their parents came home. "Hello?" No answer. "They must have already gone to bed," Toshinori said. He was the first to walk inside the living room and noticed someone laying on the couch. He walked over there and saw that Momo was laying on Izuku's chest and they were both asleep. "Hey guys, come and check this out," he whispered loud enough for the others to come to him. The three other adults walked over to Toshinori and looked at the two kids in love. They all Ed and just looked at their kids. "We should arrange a marriage for them," Yori burst out. The Midoriyas began panicking, but Nijire agreed. Toshinori then spoke. "Wouldn't it be better to let them choose instead of us forcing them?" The Yairosas thought about it for a while and actually agreed. They then left their kids on the couch and went to bed themselves. The next day, Izuku woke up and felt someone laying on him. He opened his eyes and saw Momo laying there. She looked so cute on top of him. He slowly moved his hand through her hair and thought about how they first met. "Man, I'm happy I saved her," he thought. After a while of Izuku just relaxing and blushing every once in a while, Momo woke up. She lifted her head and looked straight into Izuku's eyes. "Good morning," Izuku said and flashed a bright smile at Momo. She then noticed she was laying on top of him. She blushed and struggled to say something back. "Gigi, good morning, babe," she replied. "Did you sleep well?" Izuku asked. "Why, yes," Momo stuttered. She got off him and walked up to their room, took a shower and got dressed comfortably. It was Christmas after all. Izuku was dumbfounded how a woman could be so beautiful. Momo just kept on giving pleasant surprises. "Are you going to get dressed?" she asked. "Oh yeah? I'll be back soon," Izuku replied before he went to their room too, and took a shower and got dressed. When he got down, Momo was blown away by the cuteness. It was like another sun suddenly appeared. Momo blushed madly and tried her best to stay calm, but to be honest, it was the hardest thing to do. She just wanted to walk over to him and snuggle with him. "So how do I look?" Izuku broke the silence. Why you look, Gigi, great," Momo replied, looking away. Izuku walked over to her and gave her a big hug. They sat down in front of the fireplace once more and waited for their parents to wake up. After an hour, Inko walked down. "Good morning, Mom," Izuku said and gave her a bright smile. "Yes, good morning, Mrs. Midoriya," Momo said. "Good morning to you too. And Momo, just call me Mom. I mean, you're going to become my daughter-in-law soon anyways." Inko teased the two teens. They both blushed madly and just looked away. "Changing the subject, how was last night?" Izuku asked. "Oh, it was wonderful. Tashinori was so nice and acted like a real man. Your parents were so nice, Momo. They invited us, and at first I didn't think much about it, but as it got closer I kept getting more and more nervous, and..." Inko kept rambling on about the date, but the teens didn't care anymore. They just looked at each other and smiled. The festival. The next morning Izuku woke up and thought of him and Momo last night. He blushed, but shrugged it off, as he took a quick shower. He then got dressed and ate breakfast. On the way to school, he met Bakugo off course. "You seem to be in a good mood," Bakugo said. "Yeah. Life really is amazing," Izuku said. "So, what happened to make you so happy?" Bakugo asked. Izuku blushed. Bakugo knew Izuku would never lie to him, so he asked that question. I kissed someone," Izuku said. Bakugo looked surprised. "Wow, congrats, bro. So who was it?" Bakugo said. It was Momo," he whispered. "Sorry, can you repeat that?" "I didn't hear it," Bakugo said. "It was Momo," Izuku said. Bakugo was even more surprised. They kept walking, and the whole way Izuku was happy, jumping and running around like a child. At school, Izuku and Momo were shyer against each other. They had stuttered much more than usual. Izuku and Momo had trouble just talking to each other without blushing, and their conversations had gone much slower than usual. "Hey, Toru. The reps have been shyer towards each other today," Mina said. "Yeah, I've also noticed that," Toru replied. "Toru Hagakure, she is invisible. She can't turn off her invisibility. Quirk, invisibility. I'm gonna ask Momo in our lunch break," Mina said. "Mina, Toru, stop that chit-chat," Aizawa said. "Yes, sir," the two girls replied. It was lunch break, and Mina and Toru walked up to Momo. "Hey, Momo? Why have you and Izuku been avoiding each other lately?" the two girls asked. Momo blushed and replied, "I don't know what you're talking about." Momo tried to play it cool, but it was obvious that she was hiding something. Mina and Toru immediately understood the situation and smirked at each other, before looking at Momo again. "So what did you do?" Mina asked. We didn't do anything," Momo replied. Come on, Momo. Tell us," Toru insisted. "Oh, okay," Momo responded in defeat. "After he saved me and you guys from the villains that attacked us, my parents were eager to meet him. So when he woke up after the fight, they made me invite him to dinner. It went well, but when he was about to leave, I dragged his jacket. He looked back at me in confusion, and then he just leaned closer to me and kissed me. And we kissed for about 5 minutes before he left." Mina and Toru looked at Momo in amazement. "I can't believe Izuku made the first move." Mina and Toru thought. "I understand. That was a first for both of you, right?" Mina asked. "Yeah, I think so," Momo said. "That explains it. You probably don't know what to do now, do you?" Toru said. "No," Momo replied. "Just wait it out. I'm sure he's going to ask you on a date," Mina said. Momo blushed like a tomato and walked away. "We have to ask the guys to help us," Mina said to Toru. "And I know just the right two to help us," Toru replied. Then they thought the same thing, Bakugo and Kirishima. The two girls had told Tsuyu and Jiro about the situation and were on their way to Bakugo and Kirishima. "Bakugo, Kirishima, we have to talk to you," Jiro said. "Kyoka Jiro, she has earphone threads hanging from her ears. If she plugs them into her boots, she can end out loud sound waves in a specific direction. And if she plugs her ears into walls or other materials, she can hear what other people are talking about in another room. Quirk, earphone jack. If this is about Izuku, then I already know what you want," Bakugo replied. The girls looked surprised. You have to make him take the next move. Momo is too shy, Toru said. Yeah, I'll talk to him, Bakugo said. Bakugo found Izuku outside, eating alone. Hey Izuku, he shouted. Izuku looked up. Oh, hey Bakugo. Why are you here? Izuku asked. Why do you think? I am obviously here to tell you that you have to ask Momo on a date, Bakugo said. But I can't. I don't have much money, and I'm definitely not a charmer, Izuku replied. This made Bakugo angry. Izuku, listen to me. If you want Momo to be yours, you have to be with her and make her want you more. The festival is coming up. I heard they are going to put up stands, and that it's going to be fireworks. It's going to be very cheap, but good, food, and it is this weekend. That's good timing, Bakugo said. Izuku thought of those words as inspiring. He stood up. You know what? I'm going to ask Momo if she wants to come with me to the festival, Izuku said. He then started running to find Momo. Thank you, Bakugo, he shouted back to Bakugo. Bakugo smirked. Don't mess this up, he said to no one in particular. Eventually Izuku found Momo under a tree. Momo, he shouted to her. She looked up and saw Izuku running towards her. He stopped in front of her. Momo, would you like to go on a date with me to the festival this weekend? Izuku asked. She blushed. Yes, I would gladly go to the festival with you, she said. Izuku then sat down beside her, and they started to talk for a while. Mina, Jiro, and Toru were spying on them around the corner of the school. I don't know what Bakugo said, but he must have said something inspiring for Izuku to actually ask her out, Mina said. They look so happy, so cute. I'm happy they are together, Jiro said. Let's celebrate for them, Toru said, jumping a normal girly jump. Time skip. They heard the school bell ring as school was over. Okay, that's the bell. Now I have one last thing to say. The UA Sports Festival is in 2 weeks. You have been granted free time to train yourselves. Fight hard in the tournament, as it will have an impact on which internship you will be going to. In the internship, you will be able to go to a pro hero and be their assistant in fighting crime, and you will train with them. There's also a festival this weekend, and I would suggest you go to that festival. You're still young, and this time in life is to have fun. And with nothing more to say, class dismissed, Aizawa announced. After everyone had gotten their stuff, Mina gathered everyone. We should all go to the festival together, she said. Everyone agreed, except Todoroki. It was the festival, and Izuku had just seen the rest of the class. He was wearing black jeans and a green t-shirt with a dark green hoodie over. He went over to them but noticed that Momo wasn't there. Where is Momo? He asked. She went in that direction, Toru said and pointed to her left. Izuku started running in that direction, and he heard Mina shout to him. Go claim her. Izuku smirked as he kept running. After a while, he saw some older guys trying to drag Momo along with them. She obviously refused, but they were stronger, so she got taken. Izuku then shot a wave of flames between the guys and Momo. They let go of her, and Momo ran to Izuku and threw herself in his arms. She was holding Izuku tight. The guys mourned in defeat. Thank you, Momo said. You seriously need to stop being taken, Izuku said. I can't do anything about my good looks, Momo replied. Fair enough, Izuku said. Then he noticed what Momo was wearing. She was wearing a red skirt and a pink top with a light red jacket over. Wow, you're beautiful, Izuku said. Momo blushed, and so did Izuku. Do you want to go back to the others? Momo asked. No, they'll understand, Izuku answered. They then started to walk around the festival. Izuku bought Momo an apple dipped in syrup, and won her a cute teddy bear toy. He then got a message from Bakugo. The fireworks are starting soon. You should go to the top of the mountain. The best view is from there, it said. Hey Momo, how about we go on top of the mountain to watch the fireworks? Izuku asked. Sure, let's go, she replied. They ran up to the mountain, and right as they sat down, the fireworks started. They watched in amazement. Izuku looked at Momo, and Momo looked at Izuku. Izuku put his hand on hers, and Momo blushed. They both leaned closer, and as their lips met, a giant firework with every color went off. The whole of Class 1A had just gotten up to the mountain too, and the first thing they saw was Momo and Izuku kissing in front of a giant firework filled with many beautiful colors. Those of the class that already had their phone in their hands immediately took a picture. The class hid behind some bushes. After a few minutes, Momo and Izuku separated, and the class walked to them. "That was beautiful," Mina said and got the couple's attention. "Wait. Did you see us?" Izuku asked. "Every bit of it," the class replied. The two immediately blushed. They were then dragged away from each other. "Congrats, Izuku. Momo's definitely the right girl for you," Kirishima said as he patted Izuku on the back. "Yeah, you really scored there," Siro said. Hand to Siro. He can shoot tape out of his elbows, so he can never wear any long-sleeved clothing. Quirk tape. As for Momo, the girls were also congratulating her. "I knew you two would fit together," Toru said. "Ribbit. Midoriya is really sweet. You're lucky, Momo." "Ribbit," Tsuya said. "Congratulations," Kendo said. "Itsuka Kendo, she can largen her fists, increasing her strength and reach." Quirk, large fists. After a while, the students calmed down. They then went back to where they started. Momo and Izuku were holding hands the whole way. When they came to where they met up, the class separated, leaving Momo and Izuku alone. "Well, this was fun. I really hope we can do this again," Momo said. "Me too," Izuku replied. They then kissed one last time. UA Sports Festival Part 1. Izuku got home from the festival at 22:00. He walked inside his house and heard his mom talking with someone. "Mom, who are you talking to?" Izuku asked as he walked into the living room. He did not expect to see All Might sitting in his sofa. "All Might? What are you doing here?" Izuku asked. "I have something to tell you, young Midoriya," All Might replied. All Might then led Izuku outside. All Might checked that no one was around. Then smoke started to emit from All Might's body. The tall and muscular figure of All Might then turned into a small skeleton-looking figure. "All Might? What happened?" Izuku asked. "My real name is Toshinori Yagi, and 5 years ago I got injured in a battle. A third of my stomach was destroyed in the battle. This limits my quirk. What you see now is my true form. I can only stay in my hero form for 3 hours a day," All Might replied. "And my powers are slowly draining away. I want you to inherit my quirk. My quirk is called One for All, and it is a stockpiling quirk," All Might continued. "If you want my quirk, you first have to prepare your body for it, or else you'll die. And the most important thing about this is you can't tell anyone about One for All." "Okay, but how do I prepare my body for this quirk of yours?" Izuku asked. "You are going to clean up all the trash on Dagoba Beach, without your quirk," All Might replied. "Meet me at the beach tomorrow at 8 o'clock. "Okay. I won't disappoint you, All Might," Izuku said. Toshinori Yagi aka All Might, his quirk enhances his strength, speed, and stamina. 5 years ago he lost a third of his stomach, so he can only stay in his hero form for 3 hours a day. Quirk, One for All /OFA. Time skip, 2 weeks. In the time he had to clean the beach, he had cleaned the whole beach in just 4 days, due to him already being really muscular and well built. It turned out that Izuku had to digest All Might's DNA, so he had to eat one of his hairs. The rest of the days he had improved his element quirk, and he could use OFA's power by 20% without damaging his body. He had also been on 5 dates with Momo, and they had just come closer and closer for each one. Izuku walked comfortably into the giant arena of the UA Sports Festival. He was waiting in the waiting room with the rest of 1A. Momo was sitting next to him, they were talking. Izuku had his arm around Momo, and they looked so lovely. That's when Todoroki walked up to him and said, "Izuku, I challenge you this tournament. If I win, you have to do what I say, for a whole day." "Okay, I accept. But if I win, you have to tell me why you're so cold, and never show your true emotions," Izuku replied. This is going to be easy, the boys thought. 1A, walk to the entrance of the stadium, the speakers told them. 1A walked up to the entrance of the stadium. They could hear President Mike announce, "And here we have Class 1A. Then Class 1A walked out, being led by Izuku. The whole stadium cheered. Then President Mike announced the other classes too. And today's judge is the plus 18 hero Midnight. Then Midnight stepped up on the judging platform. Hello viewers, and welcome to this year's sports festival, Midnight said. Namuri Kayama aka Midnight, she can let free an aroma from her body that affects its victims by making them fall in a deep sleep. Quirk, somnambulist. And representing 1A, Izuku Midoriya, the kid that defeated a villain that was assumably able to kill even All Might. Izuku walked up to the platform and turned to the other students. I know some of you may think I am egoistic or spoiled, but that is so far from right. I have gotten this far due to my willpower and determination to become the next #1 hero. I'm not saying I'm undefeatable, but I am saying that this is not going to be easy, Izuku said before walking down to the other students. Well said, Izuku, Momo said. Well then. After those inspirational words from Izuku Midoriya, we are now going to start this year's sports festival, Midnight said. And the first activity is an obstacle race. Every participant moved to the start line. Everyone was at the start, and many people tried to get as far forward as possible. However, Izuku and Momo were at the back. Do you want me to help you past all the others? Izuku asked. How? Momo asked. Todoroki is most likely to try and stall the other participants, so I thought to fly over them, Izuku said. Momo was surprised at Izuku's understanding of the situation. She simply nodded, as they got ready for the race to start. Ready? Set. Gyo. They could hear President Mike shout. Izuku was right about Todoroki because when the race started, Todoroki immediately froze the floor and made a wall of ice to block the others. Izuku simply flew over all of them with Momo on his back. As he flew, he used his fire to melt the ice wall. When the two was out of the tunnel, Izuku flew up to Todoroki and waved, before flying past him, with Momo still on his back. You're on your own now, he said as he let Momo have at the first obstacle, entrance exam robots. Izuku stepped down and beat up a few small robots before he saw 0-pointers heading their way. Pathetic, he said before he threw his arm against one of the 0-pointers, completely freezing the whole robot. He then ran through the legs of the robot, and on to the next obstacle. The other students had just come to them as well. They saw that Izuku had just immobilized one 0-pointer, so they quickly followed him under the robot. Izuku smirked. I wouldn't do that if I was you. I froze the robot when it wasn't balanced. Izuku shouted back at the other students. That immediately froze, no pun intended. Todoroki was the only student to keep up with Izuku, as they got to the next obstacle. Giant pillars were stuck in a hole so big and deep, you couldn't see the bottom. It was narrow ropes stuck from one pillar to another, all the way over the giant hole. Izuku used his wind to push him from one pillar to the next. Todoroki had to slowly balance over the ropes, which gave Izuku a huge head start to the last obstacle. The last obstacle was a minefield. So the last obstacles is supposed to give the students at the back a chance. Izuku thought. PFF, they didn't think this properly through. Izuku simply made a road of ice over the minefield. When he ran past one part off the field, he melted the ice after him. He flawlessly made it over the minefield without setting of a single bomb. And the first man back, it's that guy, Izuku Midoriya, President Mike shouted out, as the crowd started cheering for Izuku. Izuku sat down and tried to calm himself down and meditate a little before the next activity. Izuku first, Todoroki second, Bakugo third, Momo 4, Ida 5. That was the top 5. The top 42 made it through to the next activity. UA Sports Festival Part 2. Thanks. Now, the next activity is a cavalry battle, Midnight announced. You will be given points after how well you did in the obstacle race. You can go in teams of 3 or 4. 42 th, 50 points, 41 th, 60 points, and so on, but first place is worth 1 million points. Izuku suddenly felt the air around him intensify, and he felt evil glares at him. He tried to get people to join his team, but no one would even try to keep the 1 million points, not even Momo. Midnight? Can I be my own team? Izuku asked. Yes, Midnight answered. And I just have to be inside the area we're going to fight one. I don't necessarily have to be on the ground. Izuku asked. Yes. There are no rules that say you have touched the ground. Midnight answered. Izuku smirked. The cavalry battle was about to start, and Izuku stood in the middle, alone, with the 1 million band on his head. Momo then remembered. Oh, how could I be this dumb? She said. What is it, Momo? Mina asked. Momo's team contained of only girls, Mina, Uraraka and Mei. I totally forgot that Izuku could fly. He is obviously going to fly out of our reach. That way he'll keep the 1 million points for the whole round. Momo replied. It looks like we'll have to play dirty, and steal the bands of smaller teams. Yeah, that makes sense, Mei said. Handsome Mei. Her quirk lets her zoom in on stuff with her eyes. She is in the Department of Support, in UA 1H. She loves her babies, also known as all the devices she makes. Quirk zoom. Let the cavalry battle start. They could hear President Mike shout over the stadium. Izuku immediately flew up in the sky. Good luck reaching me up here, he said, as he flew even higher. All the teams were stumbled, except Momo's team, that in the confusion had already taken 2 bands. Her team now had 1140 points. Okay team, now we just avoid all the others, Momo said. At the end, the teams that made it through were first place, Izuku, 1 million points, second place, Momo's team, 1,140 points, third place, Todoroki's team, 960 points, fourth place, Bakuga's team, 920 points, and fifth place, Shinsa's team, 860 points. Let's just say there were this many points. 16 students made it to the next round. Those were Izuku, Momo, Mina, Uraraka, Mei, Todoroki, Ida, Tokoemi, Ibara, Bakugu, Kirishima, Siro, Kaminari, Shiso, Ojiro, Shoda. UA Sports Festival Part 3. The cavalry battle is over, and I suggest all players still here too, Midnight said before she was interrupted by Ojiro. I withdraw, he said. Mashireo Ojiro, he has a tail. He is a martial arts expert, and uses his tail to increase his balance, strength, and speed. He is looking down on himself for being too normal. Quirk tail. What? Was the stadium's reaction. I withdraw too. They could hear Shoda, also withdrawing. Nairenjiki Shoda, Quirk, twin impact. Why do you want to withdraw? Midnight asked, as she also was a bit surprised. I can't remember much from the cavalry battle. I remember answering one of Shinsa's questions and suddenly my body moved to all his commands. I only got out of it after I bumped into Kirishima. Ojiro answered. That's what happened to me too, Shoda said. Okay then, since 2 students withdrew, Tetsu and Kendo will join the last activity. Midnight said as Tetsu and Kendo celebrated. The final activity is going to a 1v1 tournament to determine the strongest, Midnight said as the stadium cheered. The 16 students that were fighting looked up at the giant screen. Izuku vs. Shinso. Todoroki vs. Siro. Kaminari vs. Momo. Mei vs. Ida. Mina vs. Kendo. Kirishima vs. Tetsu. Tokoemi vs. Ibara. Uraraka vs. Bakugu. Izuku was in the waiting room, with Ojiro. I think Shinsa's quirk works so that when you answer him you immediately do as he commands, Ojiro said. Whatever you do, don't talk to him. Okay, I get it, Izuku answered. He then walked out of the waiting room when he heard President Mike start to talk. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. The first fight of the tournament. On my left side, the guy who has seemingly done nothing, but has still gotten this far, Hitoshi Shinso. And on my right, the guy everybody has been talking about, and the guy that have aced the 2 other activities, Izuku Midoriya. The crowd started cheering once President Mike had introduced the 2 fighters. Izuku and Shinso walked up to the arena. Okay, boys. I want a fair fight. You win by either knocking your opponent out of bounds, hitting them unconscious, immobilize your opponent, or one of you forfeit the match," Midnight said. "But now let the fight begin." And without hesitating, Izuku attacked with a wave of ice, trapping Shinso in it before he could even say something. Hitoshi Shinso is immobilized. Izuku is victorious and will move on to the next round, Midnight announced as the whole stadium was astonished of how fast Izuku won the battle. Izuku walked over to Shinso and melted the ice. "I'm sorry, I think I went a little overboard," Izuku said. "A little?" Shinso asked sarcastically. "What is your quirk anyways?" Izuku asked. "It's mind manipulating. I don't like it though, everyone avoids me because of it," Shinso answered. Izuku smirked. "Really? They avoid you? They judge you based on your quirk. That's stupid. I think you have a really cool quirk," Izuku said, and then he smiled at Shinso. "You're the first one to have said that to me." "Thank you," Shinso said. "I'm looking forward to our next fight." "Me too. After all, you just need some physical training and you're going to be a great hero," Izuku said as he stretched out his arm. Shinso gladly took it. Youth Midnight thought. So manly Kirishima and Tetsu thought. Hitoshi Shinso, he can mind control people if they give him a verbal response. Verbal response is everything from whizzing to screaming, simply just making noise with their mouth towards him. People avoid him because of his quirk. Quirk, brainwashing. The rest of the fights went as expected. Todoroki vs. Zero. Todoroki moving on after he too trapped his opponent in ice. Kaminari vs. Momo. Momo moving on after making rubber clothing to counter Kaminari's lightning. After a while of struggling, Kaminari became stupid and walked out of bounds on accident. Mei vs. Ida. Ida moving on after Mei showed off all her devices to the big companies, and then forfeiting the match. Mina vs. Kendo. Kendo moving on after being able to throw Mina out of bounds. Kirishima vs. Tetsu. Tetsu Kirishima moving after he won an arm wrestle because the two had so similar quirks, they knocked out each other at the same time. Tokoyami vs. Ibara. Tokoyami moving on after getting Ibara out of bounds. Uraraka vs. Bakugo. Bakugo moving on after Uraraka had exhausted herself, and had fallen unconscious, after being determined to beat him. The next battles were these. Izuku vs. Todoroki. Momo vs. Ida. Kendo vs. Kirishima. Tokoyami vs. Bakugo. Izuku was again in the waiting room. "I can beat Todoroki. I can counter his ice with my fire, lightning, and earth, and if he actually uses his fire, I can counter that too with air, water, or earth," Izuku thought. He again heard Present Mike start to talk. As he was on his way to the arena, he met Endeavor, the number 2 pro hero, after All Might. Izuku just walked past him. That's when Endeavor called out to him. "Izuku, right? My son Todoroki refuses to use his fire. I want you to awaken the flame in him." Izuku stopped in his tracks. "I cannot decide your son's fate, either can you. So stop trying to decide his future. He is his own person, and you can't decide his every step," he said. Endeavor would never forget those words. Enji Todoroki aka Endeavor. He is the number 2 pro hero, and he can summon and control flames. He is determined to become the number 1 pro hero, but it is impossible, as All Might is currently number 1. Quirk Hell Flame. To my right, it's the guy that saved his friends from the villains, and have done nothing wrong so far in the tournament, Izuku Midoriya, and to my left, it's the cold-hearted killer, with the hottest looks, Shoto Todoroki. The stadium started cheering again, after Present Mike announced this. "Okay. You know the rules, so now begin," Midnight said. Todoroki immediately sent a wave of ice at Izuku, but Izuku easily countered it with his fire. The battle went like that for a while, with Izuku dodging and countering Todoroki's attacks. But after a while, Izuku noticed something about Todoroki. "You can't beat me like this, Todoroki. I can counter your ice easily, and I see you're getting tired of using your ice so much." "Oh, is that frostbite icy?" Izuku taunted. "I refuse to use my old man's quirk," Todoroki replied. "That's it. It's not your father's quirk, it's your quirk, Todoroki. Don't you get it? It's your quirk, damn it," Izuku shouted at Todoroki. Then something sparked in Todoroki. He immediately went up in flames. His left side was covered in flames, and his right side had ice from his leg all the way up to his neck. Now it's a real match, Izuku thought with excitement. Todoroki shot a wave of flames at Izuku, but Izuku evaporated it with water. Then Todoroki did something extraordinary. He used his ice and fire at the same time. Izuku put up a wall of earth to protect him from the fire and ice, but the fire still reached him, and burnt some of his clothes, revealing his strong muscles. Some of the girls in the stadium blushed. "Now this is a fight," Izuku said, as he jumped towards Todoroki and blinded him with his light. Izuku took a good grip on Todoroki's shoulders, as he then slammed Todoroki to the ground, causing him to cough up blood. Todoroki quickly got up and prepared for an attack. Izuku summoned a lightning bolt and threw it at Todoroki. Todoroki made an ice wall, but the lightning bolt went through the ice and hit Todoroki in the left arm, paralyzing Todoroki's fire. Izuku took this chance and sent a wave of fire at Todoroki. Todoroki tried to stop it, but all in vain as the fire hit him straight on. Todoroki fell backward unconscious. Shoto Todoroki has been defeated. The winner is Izuku Midoriya. Midnight announced. The stadium cheered for Izuku. Then small robots came with a carrying mat and went to Recovery Girl to heal his injuries. Izuku got some gummy bears from one of the robots, as he wasn't severely injured. The rest of the fight ended like this. Momo vs. Ida. Momo moving on after being able to trick Ida to run straight at her when she was at the edge of the arena. Momo then calculated what Ida would do and dodged, causing Ida to fall out of bounds. Kendo vs. Kirishima. Kirishima moving on after overpowering Kendo. Tokoyami vs. Bakugo. Bakugo moving on as Tokoyami's quirk was weak to light. Fumikage Tokoyami. He has a crow-like shadow coming out of his body. He has the head of a crow. He calls the shadow-like creature Dark Shadow, and it is much stronger in the dark than in the light. Quirk, Dark Shadow. The semifinals looked like this. Izuku vs. Momo. Kirishima vs. Bakugo. We're going to continue the tournament tomorrow. We are going to let the fighters rest until we continue, President Mike said as pro heroes and spectators left the stadium. Izuku was in the waiting room changing. He had just taken off his shirt when Momo came to his waiting room. Izuku was shirtless and Momo blushed. She went outside and shut the door. Izuku could hear Momo apologizing through the door. Izuku sighed and thought I didn't mind. He then put on his shirt and opened the door. Looks like we'll fight each other, he said. Momo came inside. Yeah, but just so you know I won't be holding back, Momo said. I'll just kiss you until you forfeit, Izuku said. Momo blushed and sat down on the couch. Izuku sat down beside her. He looked at her, and she looked at him when they suddenly started kissing. Izuku leaned over her and laid her down. He then went on top of her and took off his shirt. Momo blushed as Izuku revealed his 8-pack and his giant muscles. Izuku started to take off Momo's shirt too when suddenly Uraraka came in the room. Izuku and Momo looked at her as she immediately turned around and shut the door. Sorry, they could hear her say through the door. Izuku sighed and got of Momo. We'll continue this elsewhere, he said as he took on his shirt. Izuku then opened the door and let Uraraka inside. What was it you wanted, Uraraka? Izuku asked. I just came to congratulate you both on coming this far in the tournament. I figured Momo would be here, but I didn't think you two would be making out. Uraraka answered as she blushed at the last part. Thank you. You didn't do so bad yourself. I actually thought you would win over Bakugo a moment there, Izuku said. They then walked back outside. Izuku kissed Momo goodbye and then walked with Uraraka to the train station. The next day, Izuku walked inside the stadium and into his changing room. He got ready for the fight against Momo. President Mike started talking and Izuku left to the arena. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the semifinals of this year's UA Sports Festival, President Mike announced. The crowd started cheering. On my left, the guy that has been arguably the strongest fighter in this tournament so far. He easily defeated Endeavor's son, and came first in the two other activities, Izuku Midoriya, and to my left, one of the most beautiful young ladies in the world. She has defeated her 2 other opponents by outsmarting them, and still showed immense strength, Momo Yaoyorozu. President Mike announced, as the stadium burst up in cheering and screaming. Are you ready, Momo? Izuku asked. I was born ready, she answered. Begin, Midnight said. Izuku attacked with a lightning bolt to paralyze Momo, but she dodged. Momo created a spear and charged Izuku. She attacked Izuku. He got hit in his thigh, as he tried to dodge. Izuku then sent a wave of flames at Momo. Momo created a shield to defend herself, but the flames still hit her on her right foot. Momo struggled to stand. Izuku took the opportunity to send Momo high up in the air by using his wind. He pushed her out of bounds with his air. Momo came crashing down to the ground, but Izuku caught her, 1 inch above the ground, with an air pocket. He then got rid of the air pocket, and Momo fell to the ground. Momo Yaoyorozu is out of bounds. The winner is Izuku Midoriya, Midnight announced as the crowd started cheering, once more for Izuku. Izuku noticed Momo couldn't stand, so he ran up to her and picked her up, bridal style. He went to Recovery Girl's office himself, and was there as Momo got healed. There was a screen in Recovery Girl's office, and Izuku watched the other fight unfold there. Begin, Midnight said. Bakugo immediately charged at Kirishima with his explosions. Kirishima hardened and put up his guard against Bakugo. Bakugo sent a wave of explosions against Kirishima. Kirishima wasn't even scratched, but you could see he was already tired. Bakugo noticed and kept sending explosions Kirishima's way. Kirishima then became soft places he didn't get hit. Bakugo noticed, and he charged Kirishima while sending more explosions. Kirishima didn't notice how close Bakugo was, so he kept standing his ground. Bakugo then jumped over Kirishima and blasted his back. Kirishima screamed in agony and fell to his knees. Walk out of bounds or it'll hurt even more, Bakugo told him. Kirishima stood up and turned to Bakugo. You should never give up. That's not something a real man would do, Kirishima replied. Bakugo smirked. He then used his explosions to fly up in the air. He then looked at Kirishima. Howitzer impact, Bakugo yelled, before sending the biggest explosion he could down on Kirishima. When the smoke cleared, it revealed an unconscious Kirishima on the ground. Kirishima is unconscious. Bakugo moves on the final, Midnight announced. The crowd was dumbfounded by how much power Bakugo could release. Bakugo smirked and looked at one of the cameras in the arena. See that, Deku? Bakugo asked. Izuku tightened his grip. He hadn't called him that since they were little. I'm going to do that to you, Bakugo continued, as he pointed at a Kirishima being carried to Recovery Girl's office. Izuku was patiently waiting in his room when suddenly Bakugo kicked the door open. Bakugo didn't understand what Izuku was doing in his waiting room. Bakugo looked at the number of the room. This is the wrong room, Bakugo said. Anyways, you're not going to win, Deku. I'm going to beat you, Deku. Do you get that, Deku? Bakugo taunted. Izuku knew Bakugo was trying to get on his nerves, and it was working. Defenseless plus Izuku equals Deku. Well then, I'll see you in the arena, Deku. I'm looking forward to beating you, Deku. And with that last sentence, Bakugo left. Izuku was standing in the arena. The crowd was cheering for him, or Bakugo. Momo was sitting with the other 1A students, and she was scared for her boyfriend. Bakugo was on the other side of the arena. They could hear President Mike announce, Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final of this year's UA Sports Festival. The crowd went wild. On the right, we have Izuku Midoriya. And on the left, his childhood friend and rival, Katsuki Bakugo. President Mike continued. Both contestants ready? Midnight asked. Bakugo and Izuku just nodded. Then let the fight begin. Bakugo immediately sent a wave of explosions at Izuku. Izuku blocked it by making a wall of earth. Bakugo kept peppering Izuku before Izuku made a move only he and All Might had seen. He turned his body into air. He then sneaked up to Bakugo that didn't notice him. Izuku then became solid again and punched Bakugo with 20% of OFA. Bakugo was sent flying, and the spectators that sat behind Bakugo could feel the wind currents from Izuku's fist. Bakugo, however, was able to catch himself by sending of small explosions, making him float. New move you got there, Deku? He asked, but without answering, Izuku charged at Bakugo, who was now inside the arena. Bakugo got ready to punch Izuku, but as he stretched out his hand to hit Izuku in the head, Izuku turned his head into air. Bakugo's fist went through Izuku's head. As this happened, Izuku punched Bakugo again, with 20% of OFA. Bakugo went flying again, but this time it took more time for him to save himself. Izuku went in for the finishing blow, but Bakugo caught his hand and threw Izuku over his shoulder and into the ground. Izuku coughed up blood, and when he got up, Bakugo ran to the other side of the arena. Izuku smirked as he sent a giant wave of ice at Bakugo. Bakugo dodged by flying up in the air. Izuku saw this and knew exactly what Bakugo was going to do. Midnight, they are going to cause a giant explosion, we have to stop them, Cementos said to Midnight, as he started to form a giant wall between the two students. Midnight immediately ripped the clothing on her arm, but it was too late. Bakugo charged up his explosion, aiming at Izuku. Izuku, however, made a giant ball of fire and lightning, with water flowing around it. Howitzer impact / cosmic ball of destruction, Bakugo and Izuku said at the same time. Izuku sent his giant lightning, fire, water ball at Bakugo, and Bakugo sent his explosion at Izuku. The two massive forces crashed into each other. The spectators were blown away by the sheer wind and shockwaves. The arena was covered in smoke, and when the smoke cleared they could see an unconscious Bakugo out of bounds, and a beat Izuku standing in the middle of the arena, with his hand up in the air. Ken Ishiyama a.k.a. Cementos. He can manipulate cement to make it any shape or size he wants it to. His body is made of cement, and he has a square face. Quirk cement. After the fight, both Izuku and Bakugo was sent to Recovery Girl's office. And in that time Momo had fought Kirishima for the third place. Momo won due to her being able to hit Kirishima where he was hurt from his battle against Bakugo. Izuku was conscious the whole time, while Bakugo was unconscious for another hour. What happened? Bakugo asked. I won. Looks like I'm not Deku anymore, Izuku answered. I guess you're not, Bakugo said, as they both started to chuckle. That was a good fight though. You nearly had me there, Izuku said. Nah, I wasn't even close. But what was that last thing you did? And that name? Cosmic Ball of Destruction? Bakugo asked. It was a move I thought about not long ago. It was the first time I tried it against someone. I'm actually surprised it worked so well. And since I thought about it just recently, I didn't really have a good name for it. Izuku replied, if you didn't get it, I would gladly get help on the name. As they finished talking, Recovery Girl came into the room. Good. You're both awake. Izuku, you can go home because you're already healed. But Bakugo, you have to stay the night to recover. Don't worry about the medals, they will be presented tomorrow, she said. Okay, thank you, Recovery Girl, Izuku said before he turned to Bakugo. Guess I'll see you tomorrow. Yes, goodbye, Izuku, Bakugo replied. Izuku then walked out of the office. He was immediately surrounded by his friends. They congratulated him on winning the sports festival. Even Todoroki was there to congratulate him. Well, since you won, I have to tell you why I'm shutting everyone out and being so cold to everyone, Todoroki whispered so only Izuku could hear it. Thank you, everyone, for congratulating me. I really appreciate it, but don't forget that Bakugo fought hard as well. I think you should congratulate him as much as me. I think you can visit him now anyway, Midoriya said. So manly Kirishima and Tetsu thought. Where's Ida, by the way? Izuku asked. He had to take care of some family problems, Uraraka replied. Oh, okay. I have something personal to take care of, as well, so bye, Izuku said before he walked off with Todoroki. Okay, as you may know, I refuse to use my father's quirk, Todoroki started. Izuku simply nodded. I actually have 3 other siblings. My mom doesn't love him, and she was forced into marriage, because she had an ice, so my father forced her into a marriage, Todoroki continued. Izuku nodded again, and he had a feeling where this was going. My father only married my mom so I could be made. My other 3 siblings were meant to have the quirks ice and fire, but they only had ice or fire. That was before I was made. I didn't have a normal childhood, because my father didn't let me play with other children, and my sibling was scared of me. So I never interacted with other people than my mom and my dad. My father was already training me and pushing me to my limits at the age of 5. He told me that I was going to surpass All Might, but I wanted to do that on my own. My mom tried to stand up for me and said that it was cruel to make a child go through this. My father simply hit her and told her to go away. It happened so many times that my mom became crazy and poured hot water over my left eye. Todoroki continued. That's where you got that scar from. Izuku interrupted. Yes, and after that happened, she was taken away from me and to a hospital for mentally ill people. After she was placed there, my father became more strict and trained me even harder. After a while, I lost my sanity and became this emotionless wreck you see now, Todoroki said, as he started to tear up. Izuku walked over to him and hugged him. It's okay, Todoroki, let it all out, Izuku said before Todoroki hugged him back and started crying. I just wish my father hadn't done such cruel things to me and my mother. He is the reason for all this. Todoroki sobbed. Well, your mom does love you. I think that if you visit her, she'll gladly welcome you back to her life, Izuku replied. Izuku then comforted Todoroki until he was over it. They then said goodbye and went their different directions. Izuku met Uraraka on his way to the train station, and they talked about the festival and what they were going to do for their internships. It was the next day, and Izuku was on his way to the stadium. He met Uraraka and Bakugo, and they were all greeted and congratulated by strangers that had seen them at the sports festival. After a hectic start, Izuku was in the waiting room. In third place, after a fantastic show from her. Please celebrate Momo Yaoyorozu, President Mike announced, and the stadium started cheering and celebrating. Izuku was now in the hallway behind the podium, where he met Bakugo. Hello, Bakugo, Izuku said. Oh, hi Izuku. Good morning, right? Bakugo replied with a genuinely happy look on his face. And now, second place, the guy that was closest to beating our number 1. Please celebrate Bakugo Katsuki, President Mike announced. Well, that's my call, Bakugo said before walking up to the second place podium. And now, the guy you have all been waiting for. The strongest student in the whole of UA's first years. Give a warm welcome to none other than Izuku Midoriya. And as President Mike announced it, Izuku walked up to the number 1 place on the podium. Fireworks were being set off on the roof of the stadium, and the crowd went wild. So much for a 15-year-old. Izuku sighed. And now, to hand over the medals, All Might, Midnight announced as All Might came flying into the arena with the medals. All Might walked up to Momo. Young Yaoyorozu, you did great in this tournament, and you should be proud of getting third place, All Might said as he then gave Momo her medal. All Might then walked over to Bakugo. You did great in this tournament too, young Bakugo. I believe you will become a great hero. You should be proud of this medal, and make it a goal to get up there, All Might said, as he then gave Bakugo his medal, and then pointed at where Izuku was standing. Trust me, All Might, it has always been, Bakugo replied. Then All Might walked up to Izuku. Congratulations, young Midoriya. You showed immense strength and intelligence, while still showing room for improvement. Take this medal, and hold on to it for the rest of your life. For, after all, you were the strongest this time, but that may not be every day, All Might said before Izuku was handed the medal. All Might stepped back and then jumped out of the stadium again. The 3 medal winners then waved at the crowd, and the crowd responded by cheering for the 3 heroes in training. Bakugo, Izuku, and Momo all felt truly happy at that moment. Internships Part 1. It was the next day, and Izuku was bored as hell. It was literally the most boring day he had ever had at UA. But then in the Modern Hero Art History class, Aizawa announced, you all did very well in the sports festival, and you have already gotten options for your internships. But as you all know, you aren't heroes without a hero name. The class celebrated. Calm down, I'm too lazy for this shit, so Midnight will determine if your hero name is alright or not, Aizawa said before Midnight walked in the room. Some of the boys got nosebleeds. Hello class, as you may know, I'm Midnight and I'm here to judge your hero names, she said. All the students got excited. This was something everyone had thought of their hero name at least once. They all got a clipboard and a marker each. The first one to introduce his hero name was Aoyama. He chose the name I Cannot Stop Twinkling. Isn't that a sentence? The class thought. It's an okay idea, but change it from I Cannot Stop Twinkling to Can't Stop Twinkling, Midnight said. Aoyama was fine with that, so he accepted it. Yuga Aoyama. His quirk allows him to shoot lasers out of his navel. He is very fond of himself. Quirk, navel laser. Up next was Mina. She chose the name Pinky as her skin is pink, and the class and Midnight was good with that. Next was Tsuyu. She chose the hero name Froppy. Next was Uraraka. She chose the name Uravity. Uraraka plus gravity equals Uravity. Then there was Ojiro. He chose the hero name Tailman, because he has a tail. Then there was Kaminari. He chose the hero name Charge Bolt. Denki Kaminari. He can let electricity off of his body. However, when he lets out too much electricity, he loses all his brain power, becoming a mindless child. Quirk, electrification. Then Kirishima. He chose the hero name Red Riot, after his favorite hero, Crimson Riot. Next was Ibara. She chose the hero name Vinsher Shiozaki plus vines equals Vinsher Ibara Shiozaki. She has vines for hair, and she can control the vines/hair. Quirk, vines. Next was Sato. He chose the hero name Sugarman. Rikido Sato. When he eats sugar, he becomes insanely strong. Quirk, Sugar Rush. Next was Shoji. He chose the hero name Tentacle. Mizi Shoji. He has 6 arms, and instead of just having hands, he can change his hands into mouths or eyes, increasing his hearing, strength, and vision. Quirk, Dupli Arms. Next was Jiro. She chose the hero name Earphone Jack. Siro chose the hero name Cellophane. Tokoyami chose the hero name Tsukuyami. Todoroki chose the hero name Shoto. It's literally his first name. Tetsu chose the hero name Metalman. Bakugo chose the hero name Lord Explosion. Momo chose the hero name Kriati. Kendo chose the hero name Handler. Ida had difficulty choosing his hero name, but he ended on Ingenia. And at last, Izuku finally chose his hero name, Deku. Bakugo was surprised at first, but then happy. His friend had turned something bad into something good. After they were done with their hero names, Aizawa wrote how many requests everyone had. Izuku had 3147, Bakugo had 1756, Todoroki had 1734, Kirishima had 1154, Momo had 990, and the others had between 50 to 400 requests. They then got papers that on it stood every internship they could choose from, except the top 5. The teachers had been nice to them, and only given them the 500 best requests. Bakugo chose the number 4 Pro Heroes internship, Best Genist. Todoroki chose his father's internship. Kirishima chose the hero, 4th Kind's internship. Tetsu also ended up going to 4th Kind's internship. Momo chose the number 10 hero, Ryukyu's, as her internship. I just couldn't make Momo go to that Hichiwabami's internship. Izuku didn't know who to choose when he suddenly saw a former hero wanted him. Gran Torino, he thought. Suddenly All Might ran into the room. Young Midoriya, I have to speak with you, he said before grabbing Izuku and running out of the room. When they came to All Might's office, he deflated into Small Might. You may have noticed a certain person in your internship requests. Toshinori started. Izuku nodded. And that was Gran Torino, right? Toshinori asked as Izuku nodded once more. The thing is that Gran Torino was my former teacher, Toshinori said. He was one of the candidates for OFA, but when I came along I was chosen instead. Instead of being salty about it, he helped me train after my master died. I want you to choose his internship. Toshinori ended. Okay. I'll choose his internship, Izuku said before he walked back to class. Time skip. Izuku was at the address that stood on the internship request of Gran Torino. It didn't look like an internship place to him. It was just a normal house. It looks like he is retired as well, Izuku thought. Izuku walked up the driveway and to the door. He rang the bell, but no one came to open the door. Izuku checked if it was locked, and the door was not locked. Out of curiosity, Izuku opened the door, and what he saw was breathtaking. He saw an old man laying on the floor, with a blood-like substance under him. Out of instinct, Izuku lifted the old man to check how big the wound was. Then Izuku noticed the old man didn't have a wound mark. He was actually completely fine. Izuku looked to where the man had been laying and saw a plate with sausages, and a cracked ketchup bottle. "Oh, you acted faster than I expected," the old man suddenly exclaimed. Why, Izuku fell back but quickly got back up on his feet. "Kid, who are you?" the old man asked. "I'm Izuku Midoriya." "I came here for the internship, sir," Izuku replied. "And you are?" "I'm Gran Torino. But you can call me Sorahiko," the old man replied. "You're Gran Torino? I thought you would be taller and more muscular," Izuku said as he examined Sorahiko. Sorahiko was about 130 centimeters tall, and he had a skinny and limp body. He wore a yellow cape, with yellow gloves and boots. He also wore a full-body monochrome suit that was skin-tight. He had a yellow belt with a big, black G in the middle. He also had a black mask that covered his eyes. "Well, time hasn't been nice to me, kid," Sorahiko said. "I can see that," Izuku thought. Sorahiko aka former pro hero, Gran Torino. Gran Torino has a quirk that lets him send out strong forces of wind through the openings in his boots, increasing his speed massively. "Quirk jet. But now attack me," Sorahiko said before he started to jump around at very high speeds. "How are you so fast, considering your age?" Izuku asked. "My quirk lets me send out massive wind forces through the holes in my soles and they let me go faster than most people," Sorahiko said. Izuku accepted what would be a tough battle. Izuku first examined Sorahiko's movements, and he noticed that Sorahiko would never jump at the same place 2 times. Izuku first thought to wait it out, until Sorahiko started attacking. Izuku protected himself, making small ice shields. And as Sorahiko had just jumped from the wall to the ceiling, Izuku froze the floor where he knew Sorahiko was landing. Sorahiko then slipped and lost his balance, creating an opening for Izuku. Izuku jumped forward using 10% of OFA and hitting the old man in his side. "I believe you don't need any training," Sorahiko said as he got up. "Instead of training, we're going to host a city to hunt criminals." Izuku's eyes glowed up when Sorahiko said this. "But we're only going after small villains. Not someone like Stain," Gran Torino continued. Stain was a villain, killing fake heroes. Heroes that only did their job for money, fame, or ladies. Stain had gotten the nickname, Hero Killer, and he had newly injured the pro hero Ingenium so badly that he couldn't move his legs, ultimately making him kind of quirkless. Izuku sat on the train with Sorahiko, both in their hero costumes. They were talking about different 1v2 strategies they could use against villains that were alone. That was when a Noma suddenly ripped up the side of the train, leaving a giant hole on the side of the train. The Noma was holding a pro hero in his hands. The hero looked beat, and he wasn't moving, probably unconscious. This Noma wasn't the same as the one in USJ. This Noma had wings, gray skin, and a normal mouth. This Noma was also much less muscular. It looked at Izuku and Sorahiko, before flying away, without the hero. Sorahiko immediately jumped after the Noma. "Kid, take care of the hero, and don't follow me," he said before jumping after the Noma. Izuku ran over to the unconscious hero and checked his pulse. "Phew, he's luckily still alive," Izuku said before turning to the passengers on the train. "Help this guy with the first aid kit, and stay at the train station when you get there. Whatever you do, don't go into the city," he said before jumping out of the train and onto a roof. He saw fire in all directions, and 3 Nomu on either part of the city. Izuku was about to jump down and handle the Nomu before he noticed something in the corner of his eye. On one of the rooftops stood a guy with many hands covering his body, and a smoke-like substance with a suit stood beside him. Izuku turned to them and saw what he didn't want to see. It was the 2 villains from USJ. Izuku sneaked up behind them. When Izuku jumped forward to grab the missed guy, A Noma landed between him and the other villains. This Noma was the same as from USJ, only it had a normal mouth, but no eyes. "Oh, what do we have here? Is it the kid that wants to play hero?" Tamura said. "I'm not playing hero. I am a hero," Izuku said as he charged the Noma. Izuku then used his ice to impale the Noma in the chest. Izuku then used the ice spear, jumped on it, and over the Noma. He was then going to hit Tamura in the head, but as he was going to hit him, a black mist surrounded. Izuku was then teleported to the other side of the city. "I nearly had him," Izuku thought as he gritted his teeth. "They have probably found another place to view the destruction, so what I should focus on now is to help the other pros and minimize damage," Izuku thought. He then started running to the closest screams, when in the corner of his eye he saw two people on the ground and one bigger person standing over them. Out of instinct, Izuku ran into the alleyway and shot a wave of fire at the one standing. He jumped back and away from the flames. When Izuku came closer, he saw that the two on the ground was the pro-hero Native and Ida. "What happened, Ida?" Izuku asked. "His quirk allows him to paralyze his opponent if he tastes their blood." "I can't move, either can Native," Ida replied. "You shouldn't interfere in my work, kid." He could hear a raspy voice. Izuku looked up and saw the hero killer, Stain. "Ida, why are you here?" Izuku ignored Stain. "I chose the hero manual to be my internship, so I could kill Stain," Ida shouted with anger directed towards Stain, and tears in his eyes. "He disabled my brother even though my brother was a true hero. Your brother was not a true hero, and you're not any better. Trying to kill me for your selfish goals and for your own good. That's two of the main factors of a fake hero." Stain interfered. "I was about to kill Native here when this brat interfered in my work. And now you're here." "It's nothing personal, kid, but I can't have anyone to get away," Stain said, now looking at Izuku. The last thing Izuku did before his fight with Stain was to send his location to someone else. Internships Part 2. Last chapter. The last thing Izuku did before his fight with Stain was to send his location to someone else. This chapter. In another place. "Shoto, follow me," Endeavor said. Shoto obeyed. "We have to save as many people as possible, and minimize damage," he continued as they then ran down the street towards the biggest explosion. Shoto then felt a buzz in his pocket. He took his phone out of his pocket and looked at what the buzzing was from. He saw that he had gotten the location of a dark alleyway from Midoriya, he thought. Shoto then turned around and ran in the other direction, towards the alleyway. "Shoto, where are you going? Get back here!" He could hear Endeavor shout after him, but Shoto simply ignored his father. Back to Izuku. Izuku threw his phone away from him. Izuku then went into his fighting stance. Stain charged at him with a dagger in his right hand. Right as Stain was about to hit Izuku with the dagger, Izuku made a wall of ice, and since Stain struck with such force, the dagger got stuck in the ice. Izuku then went around the wall and hit Stain in the side with 20% of OFA. Stain crashed into a wall. Izuku ran over to Ida and helped him stand. Izuku put him down next to Native and made an impenetrable dome of ice and earth around them. "Izuku, do," was the last thing you heard before the dome surrounded them completely. "Was that so smart?" "Do you really think you can defeat me alone?" Stain asked. "I can try," Izuku said with a smile on his face. "Come on, Shoto." "Where are you?" Izuku thought. Stain attacked, and Izuku sent a wave of ice at Stain. Stain jumped over the wave and took out his blade before slicing through Izuku's suit on his right upper arm. Izuku had barely dodged Stain's attack. Izuku backed up. Stain charged him once more. Lowering his body and holding his blade low to the ground, Stain sliced at Izuku again. This time slicing a bit of his suit on the leg. Izuku has now barely dodged Stain 2 times. Izuku sent a wave of flames at Stain. Stain just ran to the side, and then on the walls. Stain then jumped at Izuku on last time, slicing Izuku's left arm. "This is over," Stain said with a crazy look on his face. Stain proceeded to lick the blood on his blade, and Izuku immediately felt an aching pain in his whole body. Izuku fell to the ground, head first. I'm sorry it had to be like this, Stain said as he lifted his sword above Izuku's chest. But before Stain could deal the finishing blow, he was hit with a wave of fire. Izuku, I got your message, what's the situation? Shoto asked. Don't let him lick your blood, Shoto, Izuku replied. Shoto nodded, a deep determination in his eyes. Really? Another one? I seem to be really popular today, Stain said. He then threw a surprise dagger at Shoto. Shoto barely dodged. A quick one, Stain said before he charged at Shoto. Shoto shot out his fire, making it impossible for Stain to get past. Shoto ran to Izuku and got him out of the crossfire. Fortunately for them, the fire melted the ice dome around Ida and Native. Native was still down, not Ida could now move. Ida jumped at Stain's back. Stain caught his kick and threw him into the flames. Shoto saw Ida in the flames and retracted them. Ida ran over to Shoto and turned to Stain. Let me do this. I want revenge, Ida told Shoto. Don't do this for revenge. Your brother wouldn't want this. And we have an advantage with 2v1, Shoto replied. Ida sighed and nodded. You still don't have a chance, Stain said as he charged at the two teens. Ida counterattacked, while Shoto sent a wave of ice at Stain. Stain elegantly dodged Ida and went for Shoto instead. Shoto was about to be pierced by Stain's blade, when suddenly, Izuku broke the sword with 10% of OFA. Stain and Shoto were both surprised by the heroism shown by this teenager. Stain jumped back, but also straight into Ida, who managed to kick Stain in the back. Stain fell to the ground coughing up blood and crouching in pain. However, he quickly got up and did a backflip over Ida. Well, it was fun while it lasted, but I got to go now, Stain said before turning to Native that was now awake. I just have to do one thing first, Stain said before he charged a defenseless Native. Native covered his face with his arms and got ready for the impact. Native opened his eyes slowly, and he saw Izuku standing in front of him, with Stain's knife deep in his stomach. Izuku had green electricity sparking around his body. The electricity that got away from his body cracked the ground or the wall, depending on where it hit. Izuku had red lines on his body. The lines were pulsating. He had lowered his head so you couldn't see his eyes. Izuku lifted his head and opened his eyes, looking straight at Stain. The white in his eyes was now black, and his pupils had a red/green color. It was probably the first and last time Stain would be afraid. I think you're done here, Izuku said in a very deep tone. Izuku stretched out his right hand, and out of nowhere, a lightning strike hit his hand. Izuku seemed unharmed and then started to form the lightning in his hand. He formed it into a giant hammer. The hammer's handle was glowing yellow and blue, while the hammer itself was made of lightning. Stain tried to back away, but Izuku grabbed his throat with his free arm. Where do you think you're going? Izuku said. Stain tried to loosen Izuku's grip, but it was impossible. Izuku lifted his hammer and struck his hammer through Stain's chest. Stain fell to the ground unconscious. So did Midoriya. Stain woke up, and he was tied up tight. He was surrounded by people, and pro-heroes, like Endeavor and Manuel. He saw another guy sitting beside him. Izuku Midoriya was sitting beside him, and peacefully sleeping. Stain looked at the boy. What a true hero. Willing to save others, and risk his life in the process. Stain thought. Ah, you're awake. Good. He could hear Endeavor speaking but just ignored him. He knew that Endeavor was one of the more fake heroes. He knew that Endeavor only did his job for money and fame. He also knew that Endeavor had beaten his own wife to go crazy, and his own son to hate him. It's a pity that he is number 2. Stain thought. Endeavor, the police will be here soon, to pick up Stain, Manuel said. Good. What about the ambulance? Endeavor replied. The road here from the hospital was destroyed, so it will take some time for them to get here, Manuel said. I see, Endeavor said, as he then looked at Izuku. What a strange young man. Endeavor thought as he began to take a liking to the young hero in training. Suddenly a Nomu came out of nowhere and grabbed Izuku. It was the same Nomu from the train. Gran Torino came around the corner, to see the Noma flying away with Izuku. Izuku was still sleeping from exhaustion. Before anyone could do anything, Stain had broken free from the rope and was on top of the flying Noma. Stain proceeded to stab the Noma in the brain, and ultimately killing it. Izuku was about to hit the ground when Stain caught him. Stain then turned to the heroes and looked at them with a death glare. "None of you are real heroes. I saved this true hero, while you all just stood and watched him get taken. It's a pity that the world has come to this. You better start working on yourself, before I come after you too. Especially you, Endeavor, and you, Ida," Stain said with a voice so strong that it sent shivers down everyone's spines. He then collapsed on the ground. Every hero there stood and watched as the most heroic person out of all of them was a villain. It turned out that Stain had broken one leg, dislocated both shoulders, ruptured one lung, broken his left collarbone, and broken 10 ribs. The doctor said it was a miracle he was still alive. Izuku, Ida, and Shoto were laying in their hospital beds. They were all in the same room when the police chief walked in the room, being followed by Manuel, Endeavor, and Gran Torino. "We are here to tell you that you will not be charged. But you can't go around and beat people. Not even people like Stain," the police chief said. Ida and Shoto nodded, but Izuku looked at them in confusion. "So, you're telling me that I can't beat a guy that has literally disabled and killed people?" Izuku asked. "Yes, that is right. This is a rule we have, so people can't just run up and act all hero-like. That will just risk the person's life, and maybe even more people. I'm sorry if it seems unfair, but I'm just following the law," the police chief said, as he bowed to Izuku. "However, we are deeply grateful that you captured the hero killer and may have saved more people," the police chief said before he walked out of the room. Sorahiko walked over to Izuku and hit his head. "I told you to stay at the train station," Sorahiko said with a serious tone. "I'm sorry, Sensei, I just couldn't let more people get injured. That was why I went into the city," Izuku said. "I didn't say you did the wrong thing," Sorahiko replied. Izuku lightened up after Sorahiko had said that. "Thank you, Sensei," he said. Meanwhile, Manuel was talking with Ida. "You know, I kind of thought you only picked me so you could catch Stain," Manuel said. "Yeah, I'm sorry." Ida looked down. "Don't worry. It's okay to make mistakes, as long as you don't make them twice," Manuel said. Ida looked at Manuel and saw that he meant what he was saying. "Thank you, Sensei. I will try my hardest to not do the same again," Ida said. Endeavor was talking to Shoto. "You were uncautious when you went off on your own," Endeavor said. Shoto looked down. "I just wanted to be a real hero," Shoto replied as Endeavor saw his son sobbing and gripping tight onto his blankets. Endeavor then did something Shoto had wanted him to do for a long time. Endeavor hugged his son. "It's okay, son. You stayed loyal to your friend and helped him when he needed you. I am proud of you," Endeavor said. And those last 5 words made Shoto's heart finally open. After Stain was arrested, Endeavor got all the credit for stopping Stain, but he couldn't live with taking all the honor. In an interview, he said, "I was not the main reason Stain got stopped. A teen in Yui was the main reason." That left everyone wondering who it could be. Most people thought it was a third year, but no one denied that it could have been Izuku.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.